221. A long night. You finally understand, Harry, Sirius said, elated, after a moment of stunned silence. Severus was a villain for half his life. Why didn't he change earlier or later? Why now? You're so smart. Surely you thought of that too, right? Harry didn't share Sirius's triumph. He answered quietly, I knew from the start that the professor wasn't a good person before. When he first took me from the Dursleys, he told me he carried a huge responsibility for my parents' deaths, that he had a past he couldn't bear to look at. But he also said he wanted to take me away and teach me to make up for his past mistakes. Sirius's voice went sharp. Repentance isn't just words, Harry. Think. The memories you saw. When Severus was a student at Hogwarts, did he and his crowd not do terrible things? Your mother was once his best friend. She couldn't persuade him to change, and he called her a mudblood. He still didn't change after that. So how could he suddenly be a different man today, after all these years? Harry considered it. Sirius made a lot of sense, but he'd already asked Severus the same question when they'd first met. I asked him that, Harry said. He glanced at Lupin, who had been silent, then met Sirius's eyes on the floor. He told me Lily once brightened his life, and he wronged only her. If he wanted to atone for that unforgivable mistake, the only way he saw was through me. The room fell quiet. Even Sirius, stubborn as he was, could find no immediate refutation of Severus's answer. Lupin and Sirius both knew all too well the history between Lily and Severus. How, if Severus had not been so set in his ways and James had not intervened, Lily and Severus might have ended up together. From youth into adult life, Severus had been cold to everyone except the one master he later acknowledged. Lily had been the one exception. They had grown apart at Hogwarts. Now Harry had Lily's exact emerald eyes. Wanting to make amends through Harry seemed plausible, but Sirius still saw a gap. If he truly regretted Lily's death, he pressed, why didn't he watch over you from the start? You only came out of the Dursleys' house 2 months ago, right? Lily died over 8 years ago. Why wait 8 years to find you and say he wanted to repent? Something doesn't add up. Harry couldn't deny that. Still, he wanted to give Severus the benefit of the doubt. Maybe something, or someone, triggered memories and made him act now. Sirius bristled at Harry's stubbornness, ready to argue, when Lupin finally spoke up. I think I can guess why Severus chose this particular time. Both Harry and Sirius turned to him. Why? Lupin fixed his gaze on Harry. Do you remember that, before we left Britain, he met Lucius Malfoy and some others privately? Harry remembered. Of course. That's where I met Draco. We even fought. They discussed something there, or made certain arrangements. Sirius went rigid. Arrangements with the Malfoys? They must be planning to sell you out and bring back their master. If that were the case, Lupin said, the person he should have been courting is Barty Crouch or his faction. Sirius snorted. The Malfoys have never truly been loyal to you-know-who. They pick the side that benefits them. So what did Severus discuss with those men? Harry asked. I don't know exactly, Lupin said, but whatever he negotiated with the Malfoys must be opposed to Barty Crouch Jr. and his group. The Malfoys are the swing voters Severus wants to win over. Sirius harumphed. Even if he wants to oppose Barty, it could just be a rivalry, both trying to curry favor with the same master. You can think that, Lupin replied, calm. But you have ignored something from the start. Dumbledore knew what Severus was doing. The name hit Sirius like a cold gust. Of course, he had been overlooking Dumbledore's role, or refusing to accept it. Severus had worked at Hogwarts for 8 years, always within Dumbledore's view. He had suddenly whisked Harry away from the Dursleys, and even taken him out of the country to a remote place like Albania. Dumbledore could not have been unaware. In other words, much of what Severus did had Dumbledore's tacit approval. Harry supported Lupin. Yes, I met Professor Dumbledore at Hogwarts, not long after Severus brought me out. We rescued Sanguini and Patty, but the others were arrested by the Aurors. Dumbledore appeared and took me to Hogwarts. He told me I could choose whether to keep following Professor or return to Aunt Petunia. I chose to stay, and he respected my choice. Sirius still tried to resist. Dumbledore isn't omnipotent. He makes mistakes. He misjudged people before. We all misjudge, Lupin said, but one mistake doesn't mean we stop seeing the evidence in front of us. If you have doubts about Severus and worry for Harry's safety, Stay and watch what he does." Lupin's words finally quieted Sirius. The three of them, large, small, and a dog in the corner, sat in silence. Time passed until Lupin urged, "It's late. You should sleep." Harry reluctantly rose, pushed open the door, and went back to his room. For everyone except Severus, the night stretched long. Harry lay awake, tossing, turning over the memories he'd seen of his parents. Draco sat in front of a mirror, nervously picking at his ears with an earpick, terrified of going deaf. Lupin and Sirius stayed up as well, exhausted but restless after reconciling and hashing out why Harry had been following Draco. None of them slept easily. They all had dark circles the next morning when Severus came to the dining room for breakfast. "Some of you are too impatient when facing problems," Severus observed as he shrugged and ate a sandwich. Harry, bleary-eyed, peered at him. "You're treating this too calmly, Professor, as if you knew all along." "If I were a seer, I could claim I did," Severus replied dryly. When he finished his milk, Severus clapped his hands. "You should catch up on sleep. I'm going to see Nicholas and check his research. Sirius, you don't need as much rest in dog form. You'll come with me." Sirius's face went pale. He suddenly remembered that he'd stolen a letter from Nicholas Flamel's pocket the day before and left without saying goodbye. Nicholas had trusted him, had arranged everything so he could meet Severus and the others and clear the misunderstanding. Instead, Sirius had been impatient, taken the letter, and stumbled into trouble, nearly getting turned into the Aurors. He still couldn't turn back into human form because of the potion's effects. Guilt and agitation flared up. "Why should I go with you? Who do you think you are?" he snapped at Severus. Severus wiped his mouth with a napkin and glanced at him. "After sneaking off, shouldn't you go apologize to Nicholas? Explain yourself?" Sirius stiffened. "How did you know?" Their argument drew the attention of drowsy Harry, Lupin, and even Draco, who pricked up his ears to catch the gossip. Severus waved a hand toward the vocal collar around Sirius's neck. "Broadcast number 3, he said. "Do you think anyone can make this?" Sirius stared. "There are many skilled alchemists in Europe, but only one of them also knows where we are right now." Severus replied. He rose from his seat, unwilling to explain more. He had no patience for Sirius's theatrics. "And I can guess you came here behind Nicholas's back. Nicholas had arranged for you to act as a mediator, to bring you to us and sort things out. You were too impatient and acted rashly." Sirius had no answer. Severus's final remark stung. "If you insist you did nothing wrong, then consider that Nicholas trusted the wrong person and wasted his efforts." That was enough. Sirius, who had only taken a couple of bites of his sandwich, pushed away and followed Severus silently. They went to the entrance hall. Severus put on his coat as if Sirius trailing after him was ordinary. "Even Potter changed a lot after his 5th year," he said mildly. "And you, after everything you've been through, are still the same." Sirius opened his mouth to retort, but Severus had already grabbed his animagus leg. "Get ready. Apparating in animagus form feels different from human apparition." With a slight flick of his wand, the two of them twisted in the air and vanished. They reappeared at the entrance to the underground ruins. The nearby Albanian Aurors spotted them, recognized Severus, and greeted him. "Looking for Mr. Williams? He finished translating the murals last night and is resting in the tent. He should be up for breakfast now. I'll take you to him." As an Auror started to lead Severus and Sirius toward the rest tent, an Auror who had just come up from a shift change burst out of the ruins entrance, panic on his face. "Zachary and Valencia are missing," he shouted, and fired up a cluster of red sparks into the sky to summon the others. The alarm drew nearly all the Albanian Aurors, including their supervisor, Cabruna. Severus frowned and grabbed the Auror who had tried to run back after seeing the signals. "Take us to Mr. Williams first." 222, repaired silver whistle. Led by the Albanian Auror Severus, and Black soon arrived at the Aurors' tents. An elderly man emerged, looking puzzled as if he had heard the commotion of sparks outside. When he saw them, Black instinctively ducked his head and avoided his gaze, not daring to look Nicholas in the eye. Severus, however, broke into a smile at the sight of him. The Albanian Auror who had guided them there turned and left in a hurry after delivering them, so Severus could address Nicholas by name without hesitation. "Long time no see, Mr. Flamel." It has only been 2 weeks since we last met. It hasn't been that long, Nicholas said, glancing down at Black, who still wouldn't meet his eyes. A mischievous smile touched his face. It seems you two have already met? Black could no longer pretend otherwise. He raised his head and met Nicholas's gaze for a moment. His voice came over the third communicator, sounding contrite. I'm sorry, Mr. Flummel. Nicholas waved the apology away. No need to apologize to me, Black. You used your own method to solve the problem. You suffered a bit in the middle, but the result was good, wasn't it? Everyone has their own habits, for better or worse. He looked up toward the cluster of red sparks in the sky. What happened at the ruins? Severus answered. They discovered that 2 Aurors are missing. Aurors missing? Nicholas narrowed his eyes. Shall we take a look? Severus did not refuse. After reuniting with Nicholas, they returned to the entrance of the ruins. Almost all the Albanian Aurors stationed there had gathered. Cabruna was doing a second head count. His expression darkened as he confirmed that 2 of them were indeed missing. Those 2 had been responsible for the final watch in the ruins last night. They weren't seen in the ruins. Where else could they be? Search the surrounding area. Dead or alive, we must find them. Under Cabruna's orders, the Aurors split into groups and fanned out into the woods. Nicholas stepped up to Cabruna and asked quietly, Did you discover they were missing early this morning? Already pressed by a mountain of troubles, Cabruna's face eased noticeably when he saw Nicholas. The translated manuscript of the 16 he symbols Nicholas had given him the night before had been extremely valuable. After he returned it to the Ministry of Magic, Albanian alchemists treated it like a treasure, and it had helped him regain some face with the minister. Yes, Mr. Williams, Cabruna said. According to the shift schedule, the people taking over discovered they were gone from the underground. Nicholas considered for a moment. The 2 gentlemen who went missing, I ran into them as I was leaving last night. Their behavior struck me as odd. Odd, Cabruna repeated, his expression tightening. Yes, Nicholas said calmly. I remember one of them greeting me. His tone didn't match his usual manner. At the time, I didn't think much of it. You mean, it's possible they were replaced before they even went underground for their shift? Cabruna's voice held a thread of panic. It's only a guess, Nicholas added softly. My intuition could be wrong. Even so, Cabruna could not treat it as mere imagination. After Nicholas relayed his suspicions, he returned to Severus's side. After receiving your letter, I brought Black here immediately, partly to help you and partly to confront him and see if I had misjudged him. He teased Black as he spoke. It seems the facts have proven me right. Black kept his head down. Whether he had nothing to say or was too embarrassed to speak was unclear. Why not change back to human form? Black, if you're ashamed to see me, there's really no need. He was affected by a potion brewed from a recipe Grindelwald gave me last night. Severus explained for Black, who didn't know how to respond. Nicholas blinked, a subtle look crossing his face. A potion that stabilizes magic? Yes. With his breadth of knowledge, it took Nicholas only a few seconds to understand why Black could not change back. He looked at Black again, then at Severus, and clicked his tongue. That potion is no simple concoction. It stabilizes magical states. It's not easy to reverse. It looks like you'll be a dog for quite some time. Black felt a fresh surge of despondency and unease. Severus had told him the same thing the day before. Hearing it again from Nicholas made it feel more real. Where can I find the antidote? He asked. Nicholas shrugged. That potion isn't a common poison. The recipe was in only one person's hands until recently, so no one else could have developed an antidote. Right now, the only potioneer who knows the recipe is Severus. He's the only one who could possibly develop a cure. If you want to turn back into a human, you'd better start sucking up to him, Nicholas added lightly. Even saying the phrase made Black grind his teeth. Then I'd rather be a dog for the rest of my life. Severus and Nicholas shared an amused smile. Then Severus turned to the more pressing matter. So, has your research on that mural yielded any results? The harvest was significant, Nicholas replied. On the surface, the mural tells the story of the Fountain of Good Luck, but the internal 16 symbols encode a complete construction for an alchemical device. From your description of the 21 found deep in the ruins, it appears to be meant for that device. Severus felt a thrill of excitement. Excellent. Seeing his reaction, Nicholas issued a sober warning. Although I still don't understand your specific purpose in coming to this forest, Severus, I must warn you, something is definitely wrong with the local legend of the Fountain of Good Luck. Severus already suspected as much. Even if the Albanian aurors had been slow to realize it, the moment he had seen the basilisk he had deduced the likely origin of these ruins, a pre-classical workshop tied to Herpo the Foul. To build such an underground complex here, to breed a basilisk that had lived so long, Severus could think of no one but that infamous ancient dark wizard. Herpo the Foul, the originator of the first basilisk, the first Horcrux, and a figure whose research had influenced the dark arts down through the ages. That such a ruin would feature a mural about a fountain of good luck and hide something that purportedly located the fountain was not comforting. How could a man like Herpo be so benevolent? Even if the spring offered brief good fortune, it would almost certainly demand a disastrous price. Severus had never come to this place in search of the fountain. His goal, from the start, had been Lord Voldemort. The clues Voldemort had left behind led to this fountain of good luck, but Severus could not be sure what the weakened, wraith-like Voldemort intended, nor whether events here mirrored the original timeline. Since arriving in this world, Severus had set many things in motion. Perhaps small deviations had multiplied into significant differences in this isolated forest. "Don't worry," he said. "My goal isn't that fountain of good luck. Even if I find it, I won't use it." Nicholas had no reason to doubt him. Then let's see what use your 21 actually has. They were preparing to apparate back to the troll camp by the river when the Albanian aurors searching the surrounding woods suddenly shouted from a distance. "Supervisor, we found them! We found them!" The voice was panicked. Cabruna spun around, and Severus and the others followed. The aurors were returning with 2 corpses, their faces ashen and looking as if they had been dead for some time. Seeing them, Severus and Nicholas did not stay. They apparated straight back to the troll camp with Black. Once there, Nicholas asked Severus in a low voice, "Can you guess who did it?" Severus narrowed his eyes. It could be anyone. Perhaps a wandering dark wizard, perhaps an Albanian rival attracted by the legend of the fountain, or someone with the same goal as mine. Nicholas did not press further. After bringing him back to their tent, the others, Draco, Harry, Lupin, were all pleasantly surprised to see Nicholas in this foreign land. Nicholas seemed to enjoy the warm welcome. He laughed as he greeted the children and produced candies from his pockets to share. After a time of reunion and conversation, Nicholas followed Severus and Lupin into their study to examine the 21. Holding the whistle and studying it closely, the knowledgeable Juan 1 offered his assessment. A very crude piece of work, yet the idea behind it is somewhat original. Lupin asked from the side, "Can you determine its function?" "The 16 symbols on this are the same as those I found on the mural in the ruins," Nicholas said. "They translate as summoning." Severus and Lupin exchanged a look. Severus explained, "In the Fountain of Good Luck legend, a golden unicorn leads the fortunate person to the spring. We guess the whistle summons that unicorn." Nicholas produced a handkerchief and carefully wiped the 21. "Your deduction is sound and highly probable. The reason you couldn't blow it before is that the alchemical pattern on it was incomplete." "Can you repair it?" Severus asked. "Ha! That's exactly why I came here. If I couldn't manage something like this, my trip to those underground ruins would have been wasted." He began pulling various odd tools from his trunk. "Give me 2 hours. It's a crude piece. It won't take much effort." Severus and Lupin left him to work. Just as lunch was ready and 2 hours had passed, Nicholas emerged from the study holding the 21. It looked the same at first glance, but the pattern had been fully restored. He handed it to Severus. That was too simple. With the corresponding 16Z symbols, you could find an apprentice anywhere to help fix it, though it would take them much longer. Severus accepted the 21, but first insisted Nicholas join them for lunch. After they ate, he and Lupin finally began a proper examination of the repaired alchemical tool. 223, Unicorn and Stone Arch. "Can it be sounded now?" Lupin asked, looking at the whistle, which still showed no visible change. Severus Snape had no doubts. If Nicholas says it's fixed, then it's in working order. Then what are we waiting for? Don't you want to find the legendary fountain of good luck? Severus shook his head. The fountain itself is not the point. The important thing is to find the person who would be interested in the fountain of good luck, using the clue this underground ruin gives us. The study fell silent. After a long moment, Lupin frowned and met Severus's eyes. So it's come to this. Tell me plainly, what was your real purpose in bringing us all here? Severus said nothing immediately. He looked at Lupin and smiled. You've suspected for some time, haven't you? They held each other's gaze for a while. Finally, Lupin drew a deep breath. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. It's too bold. If you were really trying to find him, Dumbledore ought to have been called. Dumbledore? Severus snorted softly. Trust me, what's happening here has drawn attention. Even if he had other motives, he'd be watching everyone with care. If he found someone he considered a problem, he'd leave without hesitation. Lupin's eyes didn't waver. You seem to understand his state very well. Perhaps I understand him better than he understands himself, Severus said lightly. Then, more seriously. But what about Harry? Bringing him here is putting him in danger. Even you think that, Severus replied calmly. Do you think he would? If he still believes I'm his loyal servant, would he suspect me if I brought his mortal enemy to find him? If he thought I were that faithful, would he have doubts about my loyalty? Lupin's frown deepened. But if Harry truly is in danger, he has no power to harm anyone at the moment, Severus interrupted. Right now he is at his weakest. If we can seize this opportunity, we remove his threat permanently. If we fail, who knows how many will die later, people you and I care about, that reckless dog, and countless others. Lupin stared at him, and after a long pause, let out a slow breath. My father chose to trust you once. He was not wrong. I think I can trust you once as well, Lupin said. Severus wasn't surprised. He gave a dry little laugh. Back at Hogwarts, did you ever think you'd come to a day when you could trust me? At the time, Lupin admitted, I thought that if I tore you apart as a werewolf, it would be worth going to prison for. Then you were merciful, Severus said, and with casual movement raised his wand and pointed it at the whistle Nicholas had repaired. Lupin's gaze settled on the whistle, too. I have a feeling that once this is sounded, something extraordinary will happen. That unicorn can't have simply appeared and led us here without reason. Lupin tightened his grip on his wand. Severus sent a gust of air through the whistle with a flick. A sharp, bird-like cry burst out, high, clear, and piercing. The sound spread from the study, out of the tent, through the troll camp, and almost across the entire forest. Wizards searching for the Fountain of Good Luck heard it and looked up, puzzled, scanning the trees for a source. They found none, until a golden shape flashed at the edge of the wood. The creature streaked toward the center with breathtaking speed. Those who saw it gasped. It's the golden unicorn. My God, it's appeared. Quick, follow it. It will lead us to the Fountain of Good Luck. Many wizards rushed after the creature, thinking to follow it to the fabled spring. The unicorn's pace, however, was blistering. Ordinary folk could not keep up. Only those who had come prepared and who were mounted on broomsticks were able to follow it through the air. The unicorn did not pause. It ran straight to the troll camp where Severus and the others were gathered. The commotion drew Severus and Lupin from their tent. They found the legendary creature standing by the river. Seeing it in person, rather than the blurred image in a photograph, left no doubt that it was no ordinary beast. Its pale gold coat gleamed like gossamer in daylight. The long, sharp horn shone as if forged from pure metal. Its whole presence seemed almost sacred. Harry and Draco, drawn by the noise, tumbled out of the tent and stared, eyes shining. It's the unicorn that can lead us to the Fountain of Good Luck, Draco cried, as if a wish were coming true. Harry's grip slackened, without him noticing, until the puff skein on his shoulder slipped off and bounded away. Above them, 6 or 7 broom riders had gathered, having followed the unicorn. It stopped at the riverbank, and then the unicorn's horn flashed with dazzle so bright everyone had to look away. When the light subsided and they dared to look back, a rough stone arch had appeared where the unicorn had stood. The unicorn stood beside the arch and, with no hesitation, stepped through. Though the arch looked open from both sides, The unicorn vanished as it walked through. Two of the broom riders broke without thinking. The instant the unicorn disappeared, they nosed their brooms downward and shot through the arch with a whoosh. They, too, were gone. Seeing that, the other wizards ceased hesitation and surged into the archway. Harry and Draco were desperate. They had summoned the unicorn, opened the door. How could others be getting ahead of them? They grabbed at Severus's sleeves, urging him to hurry. Severus pressed them both down. "Don't rush," he warned. "Remember the old stories of the Fountain of Good Luck. Just because the gate is open doesn't mean we find the spring at once. There are many trials ahead." "What else do we need?" "Wands," Harry snapped. "I've got mine. Let us go." Draco, if not held back, would have darted through. Harry's face clouded as he looked at Severus. "You won't leave us behind, will you? You promised after we helped the trolls build their houses that we'd get to look for the fountain when it appeared. Now it's here. You can't not take us." Severus looked mildly exasperated. "Since the day you met me, when have I ever broken my word to you? I know that if I refused, you'd find a way to sneak in. If you're coming, you'll stay by my side from the start." "Then what are we waiting for?" Draco cried, triumphant. "Let's go." "You're coming only if you understand the rules inside," Severus said, folding his arms. The boys hurried to agree. "We promise to be obedient. We won't run off." Severus insisted on more. "You must report any unusual discovery to an adult at once. If there's danger, you stay with an adult. No solo heroics." "We promise," Harry and Draco said together. "Black will be right behind you, watching you," Severus added. Black, who had been lazing to one side with no interest in the unicorn or the arch, looked disdainful at the mention of being assigned to look after the two children. But seeing Harry, he hesitated and then stood, following behind them. With arrangements made, Severus and Lupin in front, Harry and Draco in the middle, Black bringing up the rear, they stepped through the arch. Nicholas, who had repaired the whistle and had shown no interest in the fountain, watched them vanish. He dragged a lounge chair from the tent, sat down, and watched as more and more wizards learned of the arch and rushed to pass through it. "So many people chasing after illusory luck," he murmured, looking up at the sky. "Why not try to seize fate with your own hands?" The passage through the arch felt like walking through a film of cold water. A moment later, they were in a new place, at the foot of a tall mountain. It was impossible to tell whether they were still in the Albanian forest. The sky was clear, but there was no sign of a sun overhead. Lupin offered a guess. "We might have been pulled into a special space. Some ancient wizards like to stash legacies in places like this, waiting for later generations to find them." Severus had pulled a handful of common alchemical trinkets from his robes, quick quotes, quills, and the like, but none of them worked here. "Most alchemical devices have failed," he observed, "and many people passed through before us. They couldn't possibly have been that fast. Either different groups are sent to different locations, or this whole place is some kind of illusion projected from the gate." A small weight and a fuzzy nuzzle on his shoulder interrupted him. The puffskein Harry had kept had somehow leapt onto Severus's shoulder. Seeing that the creature had come through too, Severus dismissed the illusion theory. "This isn't a mere trick," he said. "The arrangements protecting this fountain have been in place for centuries. No one could sustain such a complex illusion for 1,000 years without error." "Then shall we go?" Harry and Draco were already rubbing their hands, faces alight with excitement. For them, it was a proper adventure. Severus pointed toward the mountain peak. "According to the legend, we must climb to the top." 224. Good luck before the fountain of good fortune. According to the story, aren't we supposed to run into a giant white worm here? Having walked onto the tree-lined hillside that looked more like a botanical garden than a wilderness, Harry scanned their surroundings and asked curiously. "That's just a legend," Draco replied in a mock-mature tone. "How could such a creature really exist?" Severus ruffled Draco's hair and spoke up. "Perhaps that worm does exist, but I encountered it when I was searching for the whistle." "How is that possible?" Draco sniffed. "How could there really be such a huge worm in the world?" "To be precise, it was a snake, a very peculiar snake," Severus said, glancing ahead. In front of them, a narrow path led up to the mountaintop. The forest didn't cover the whole mountain. If they walked a little farther, the trees gave way to a barren, steep peak. Black brought up the rear, alert and uneasy. His canine senses told him something was off about this place. The group's casual mood only amplified his discomfort. It felt less like a serious quest and more like two adults taking two children and two pets on a picnic. Lupin had even packed food, just in case they lingered too long. That casualness gnawed at Black. After wandering through the garden-like slopes for about 2 hours and pausing at least once to rest, they finally reached the start of the steep hillside. The path ahead deteriorated. The mountain face was sheer and difficult to climb without tools. Neither Severus nor Lupin could apparate here, and almost all 15 proved useless against the stone. If they wanted to get up, they had to scramble with their hands. Less than 20 minutes into the climb, Harry was out of breath. He leaned against the rock and complained, "Shouldn't some line of text pop up about now, asking for the fruits of our labor? Then our sweat would drip on it, and we'd pass the trial." "Don't treat this like an adventure game, Dudley," Lupin warned. "Those tales get prettified. No one knows what the real thing is like." Draco looked up at the unchanging summit and shouted, "We've been climbing forever, and we're not any closer. This is exactly like the stories. The hillside is a trap. If we just keep going, we'll never reach the top." "But we don't have any better option, do we?" Severus said, calming them. "Since you chose to come with us, there's no turning back. We must keep going." They stopped grumbling and continued, sweating as they climbed. Another 2 hours passed, and they were still circling the slope with no sign of breaking through to the summit. Now, even Lupin and Severus realized that without finding the right route, they could wander forever. In the legends, when you reached this cliff, it reminded you to give the fruits of your labor, Severus mused, thinking back to early versions of the Fountain of Good Fortune story, looking for clues. "But if the white basilisk I met in the underground ruins, before I found the 8, stood in for the worm trial, that snake didn't speak to me either." "You killed it outright," Lupin pointed out. "That was the trial then." Severus glanced at the peak. "Still, given our situation, we can't just level the mountain." They had found a ledge to rest on and were considering their options when Black went looking for a place to relieve himself. Though in dog form, he couldn't bring himself to defecate in public with children around. He wanted to keep his dignity. The cliff was bare, and a private spot was hard to find. After wandering, he found a slightly sheltered niche behind 3 protruding rocks. Just as he was about to lift his hind leg, a fluffy figure appeared in his peripheral vision. Harry's puffskein had followed him. It hopped onto one of the rocks and stared at Black with wide, curious eyes, as if waiting for him to move. At first, Black thought the creature was simply brainless, and he'd be fine ignoring it. But the puffskein's stare made him suddenly self-conscious. He couldn't go. "Go away, you stupid ball! Go find them! Don't bother me!" he growled. A mechanical voice sounded from his collar as he tried to shoo it off, but the puffskein only hopped and landed on Black's head. Panic set in. He pawed at the creature, shouting, "Get down! I'll tear you apart! My patience is limited!" In his frantic running to shake the puffskein off, Black stepped into thin air and plunged forward. The drop wasn't deep, but it tumbled him into a hidden cave. He bounced up quickly and took in his surroundings. This was a tunnel cut into the hillside, and it sloped up toward the summit, an alternative path they hadn't seen. Black snorted with satisfaction. He wasn't interested in the Fountain of Good Fortune for its own sake, but he wouldn't hide this discovery. First, he found a comfortable corner to relieve himself. Then he hurried back to fetch Severus and the others. Soon, they followed him down into the tunnel. "Amazing, Black!" Harry cheered. Draco cheered too. He still didn't know Black's true identity. During the day, both Harry and Lupin called him Black, and that name wasn't unique. Severus smiled and praised him as well, but his smile faded when he noticed a faint urine smell. Black unusually led the way, urging them, "Hurry up. We don't know if this route will actually work. Don't dawdle." They followed the tunnel and, for the first time, felt altitude change instead of endlessly circling. After about an hour, they reached the cave's exit. Stepping out, they found the steep, barren wall behind them. They had bypassed the difficult cliff. Ahead was the mountaintop, and, beyond a wall of dense plants, a garden whose center shimmered with mist and water vapor. "We're almost there," Harry and Draco shouted. But a river, 4 or 5 meters wide, separated them from the garden. Black tried to swim across first, but his body sank immediately. Severus and Lupin hauled him out. They tried spells to cross the river, but nothing worked. Severus even poured fast-growth potion on a tuft of grass, hoping it would span the bank. But when the grass reached the middle, it was yanked into the water by some force and couldn't come out. They were stuck, facing the same difficulty as in the legend. In the stories, the river would give intruders a hint about how to cross. This one gave no obvious clue. They searched the small mountaintop thoroughly for a bridge or alternate route, but found nothing. Just as they were at a loss, Harry, frowning and thinking, noticed his puffskein at the water's edge. He moved to stop it. Don't fall in." He reached, but his foot caught on a rock, and he fell face first into the dirt. As he tumbled toward the river, he grabbed instinctively for something cold and hard in the mud, and it arrested his fall. "Dudley!" Lupin shouted. "Are you all right?" Harry picked himself up, covered in grass and mud, clutching the puffskein with one hand. "I'm fine, but I think I found something." He looked down. In his other hand was a thin iron chain, one end disappearing into the water. When he tugged, whatever lay beneath the surface pulled. Severus and the others hurried over. "Pull hard, Harry. That has to be the key to crossing," Severus ordered. Energized, Harry set down the puffskein, grasped the chain with both hands, and pulled. His strength alone wasn't enough. Only when Severus and Lupin joined did the hidden drawbridge rise out of the water. "Our luck is unreal," Harry cried. "Now the last obstacle is gone." "I can't believe it," Draco exclaimed, flushed with excitement. "If this is our luck now, how lucky will we be after bathing in the fountain of good fortune?" Lupin secured the iron chain to a tree, while Severus looked at the bridge with something like unease at being so fortunate twice in a row. The discomfort soon vanished in the thrill of success. With the drawbridge fixed, the group, 4 people, the dog, and the puffs crossed and entered the garden. Inside, the plants grew extraordinarily lush. Vines and creepers had woven thick walls, turning the area into a maze. Far from being dismayed, Severus and the others brightened. They had remembered something. Lupin opened the case he always carried and rummaged through it until he produced an old, oversized one. 225. Ultimate goal. That was the maze map Draco had found 2 weeks earlier in the old Troll Valley, pulled from a skull he'd fished out of the mud. In the middle of the map, the spring-like symbol had made Lupin and Severus guess at once that it marked the Fountain of Good Luck. Now, with only one step left to the spring, they had indeed entered a maze. It was almost certain the map led straight to the fountain. The prospect electrified the group. Even Severus, who rarely showed such outward enthusiasm, felt his spirits rise. All except Black, the dog, had been carried along by the excitement. The puffskein on Severus's shoulder was even bobbing up and down as if cheering. Lupin had long since learned to read the maze drawn on the map. By eyeing the pattern of the living vine walls around them, he could place their position and lead them through. They pushed deeper into the maze, no longer lounging as they had on the hillside. Their eagerness quickened their pace, but soon they ran into something the map hadn't shown. A dense, thorny bush had extended from the vine wall and swung its spiky branches like a small whomping willow, barring their path. Lupin tried several spells, but the thorns shrugged them off. It was as if the plant had been fed a special potion. Its branches resisted magic. Severus signaled Lupin back, reached into a pocket that seemed to hold more than it should, and pulled out a small bottle of dark green potion. From a distance, he threw it at the roots. The glass shattered, and the green liquid clung to the roots in tendrils. A sharp white smoke rose. The bush reacted instantly. The once vigorous branches yellowed, withered, and slumped to the ground. Once it lay limp, the 5 of them, 4 people and 1 dog, could pass. They made their way through the rest of the maze quickly. As the bright sky dimmed, after 3 or 4 more such plant obstructions, they emerged. What lay before them stopped everyone in their tracks. A garden like something from a fairy tale unfolded. Towering trees they had never seen outside such a place, vibrant vines drooping from lush boughs, and countless tiny fairies darting through the air. The path underfoot was flagstone, immaculately clean, bordered by an astonishing variety of rare magical plants, many that Severus recognized at a glance. In the center of it all stood a fountain beneath a faint rainbow. Even in the fading light, the water spouted like a shower of crystals, each droplet glittering. Near the fountain, a golden unicorn, an impossible thing to many of them, a creature Severus had never seen before, strolled calmly along the flagstone, nibbling at a roadside herb. It showed no panic when the group entered. It did not flee. Seeing the fountain, Harry and Draco flushed with excitement and would have leapt forward if Lupin hadn't held them back. Severus felt something else entirely. From the moment he stepped into that garden, his gaze locked on the golden unicorn and did not stray. Even the legendary fountain failed to draw him as strongly as the creature did. At first, he could not have said why. The emotion rose like a tide, changing his thoughts. The unicorn seemed suddenly like a prize to take, something to possess. The desire knotted in him so sharply that he frowned, startled at the intensity. What did he want with a unicorn? He asked himself, trying to think it through rationally. Even if the beast were valuable in every respect, what could he possibly lack? And yet the answer came immediately and with brutal clarity. He needed something from that unicorn. Blood. Unicorn blood, especially from a golden unicorn, which had never before appeared in the magical world, must be unimaginably potent. If he could bring that blood back to the one he served, it could restore him, prolong his life, change everything. He could kill this creature and present its blood as an offering to his master. That would prove his loyalty. That was why he had come here. How else had he found himself in Albania, guided to this forest? He saw, for a moment, only the path to accomplishing that end. Something is wrong with you. The voice spoke in his ear, cold, calm, and impossibly familiar, like a chime of ice. It was Ghost Snape, a mental presence Severus had learned to rely on. The sound was a bucket of cold water thrown over him. The fevered surge in his thoughts retreated, and clarity returned. The irrational flood of desire dwindled into absurdity. Is it a confundus? He thought, narrowing his eyes. Ghost Snape, who had watched Severus's emotional shift and had at the critical instant warned him, nodded in his mind with guarded intensity. A very advanced confundus had been used, he replied. It was subtle and powerful. It had taken hold early. You were already a little off when you came in. You simply didn't notice. But I have occlumency, Severus countered internally. I should be immune to most confundus. Ghost Snape's reply was blunt. Confundus can be superior to legilimency in some ways. It does not read memories. It alters perception, nudging emotions and impulses without directly opening the mind. Severus kept his surface composure and helped Lupin hold back Harry and Draco from dashing toward the fountain. He kept his gaze on the unicorn while he and the ghost exchanged thoughts. The memory of the urge to kill the unicorn and to bring its blood to the man whose name nobody dared speak was still vivid enough to tell him whose trap this likely was. Lord Voldemort did not believe in luck, and he did not need a fountain to help him. He was weak now and needed anything that could prolong him. Unicorn blood was legendary among such remedies. Only someone desperate and resourceful enough would set this maze and enchantments, and only someone who could influence Severus's emotions so intimately could plant this particular lure. You can't be in your prime right now, Severus muttered aloud to no one in particular, though his mouth formed the words. In your current state, how could you use a confundus strong enough to affect me? Ghost Snape's thought came back, quieter now, weighing possibilities, unless he had been with you for a long time before. Severus knew what Ghost Snape meant without looking over his shoulder. If Voldemort had been present with him for an extended period secretly, he could have observed, probed, influenced. But the idea unsettled Ghost Snape. The tone of his mental voice betrayed fear and tension that Severus himself felt in a small, controlled way. Do you know how he confused me? Severus asked, not out loud, but within the silent channel between them. Ghost Snape did not answer. He did not need to. Severus explained anyway. The confundus had not directly planted the desire for unicorn blood. It had twisted the wellsprings of Severus's old loyalty, rekindling an instinctive belief that if he killed the unicorn and brought its blood to Lord Voldemort, he would show loyalty and bring him back. The feeling had been layered over older loyalties, so powerful because those loyalties had once been real. That's the problem, Severus told him. The spell only works because my old loyalty, however buried, still exists. If my loyalty were genuinely gone, the chain of thought would break. Once I reached the unicorn, I would have asked myself, why should I give its blood to him? What does his return offer me? That question would have stopped me. Ghost Snape's mental face showed confusion. But if that's true, then you won't help him get the blood, and his plan fails. Severus's reply was a small smile that had gone from his mouth into his thoughts. Exactly. Which is why logic suggests he values confirming loyalty more than simply obtaining the blood. If he can prove I am still obedient, he gains more than a potion. He gains a servant he can command and a way to manipulate far greater outcomes. Ghost Snape's sharp mind caught up. He needs you. Of course he needs me, Severus murmured. He is at his weakest. Even discovering a possibly loyal subordinate makes him paranoid. He goes to elaborate lengths to test that loyalty. He outlined the likely sequence. Once Voldemort realized Severus's presence, he watched and guided him, orchestrated finds, and led him to the fountain and the golden unicorn. The confundus was both bait and barometer. Ghost Snape's concern deepened. Fortunately, we noticed just in time. Severus gestured inside his head for reassurance. Don't be so certain, he thought. You might not have believed everything I was telling you, but isn't his behavior proof of it? He began to step forward. From the outside, Lupin, Harry, and Draco saw Severus stand and stare at the unicorn for a long moment, then walk toward it, ignoring their calls. Ghost Snape fell completely silent and held his breath in the way a watcher does at the cliff's edge. Severus stopped just before the golden unicorn. He did not speak. He did not yet reach for any weapon. He stood, his face unreadable, and the garden seemed to hold its breath with him. Unicorns. Whether in the magical world or among muggles, they rank with dragons and phoenixes as legendary creatures. For most wizards, unicorns are almost unheard of. Only a handful of magical nature reserves in Europe still hold herds. The Forbidden Forest at Hogwarts is one of them. Wherever they come from, they look virtually the same. Pure white coats, a spiraled horn on the forehead, prodigious magic, and a reputation for approaching only the pure of heart. The golden unicorn that had led them toward the fountain of good luck matched the ordinary form in every way, except its coat was pale gold and its horn shone like polished metal, throwing a faint radiance under the dim sky. "Professor! Professor! What's wrong?" Harry called from behind Severus. Severus didn't answer. He simply met the unicorn's gaze. There was no fear in it, only that calm, indifferent intelligence those creatures always had. He reached out. His hand passed through the unicorn as if through mist. The revelation hit them all. The magnificent golden unicorn that had guided them into this secret place, that had seemed so vivid and even able to eat, was not a physical creature at all. It was a spirit. With that understanding, the strange compulsion that had been gnawing at Severus, the urge to kill the unicorn, receded. The feeling was like being offered a steaming mug of chocolate and then getting a whiff of rot. How can this unicorn be fake? Even Snape's old self, whatever part of him the others still called Ghost Snape, couldn't fully hide his incredulity. Severus did not look surprised. He smiled inwardly. Is it any wonder? Of course it isn't real. Anyone who uses their head for a moment should have figured that out. The current Lord Voldemort, however, has long since mislaid his brains. Snape's face darkened. He knew Severus was including him in that slight. Why do you say it can't exist? Think about it. How long has the legend of a golden unicorn in this part of Albania been told? Hundreds, even thousands of years. No unicorn, no variant, lives that long. The story's age alone makes the existence of a literal, ageless unicorn impossible. Severus had another piece of evidence he hadn't said aloud. He had long suspected Voldemort had never succeeded in drinking unicorn blood in the Albanian forest. In the original tale, Quirrell found a nearly dead Voldemort. He'd been desperate enough to kill and drink unicorn blood. Something must have gone wrong back then. Now Severus realized why. The unicorn was a spirit, like Peeves, able to appear to interact with the physical world, but not defeatable or bleedable in the usual way. As the supernatural influence drained away, the restlessness in Severus eased. The small animal Harry had perched on his shoulder became less agitated. Outwardly, Severus let a rueful expression pass over his face, then turned back to the group. "What was that just now?" Lupin asked, puzzled. Everyone had seen Snape's oddness. Severus couldn't tell them the whole truth. Not now. He didn't need to overplay it. He gave a small wave and the practiced smile he wore like armor. "Nothing. The unicorn stirred up some memories. Let's ignore it and examine this so-called fountain." No one doubted him, but Sirius Black watched Severus closely. The man who knows you best is often your enemy. Black had never trusted that Severus had truly changed. Even if Snape repented, Black thought he couldn't be that honest about everything. Now Black felt sure Severus was hiding something. He said nothing. He'd been told what to do. Observe. No one can fake themselves forever. Sooner or later, Severus would slip. While Black stewed, Severus led Harry and Draco to the spring's edge. "Why don't we all jump in and have a bath? The legend says whoever bathes in this spring gets good luck," Draco said, already shrugging off his coat. Severus smacked him on the head. "The legend also says the water's effect goes to the first bather. There are 4 of us and a dog. Who gets to be first?" Draco blinked. They argued the merits. Black had found the cave to the ridge, Harry had noticed the hidden suspension bridge under the water, and Draco had discovered the skiff's clue that led to the map in the Valley Lake, leading Lupin on. Severus quietly reminded them that if he hadn't defeated the basilisk in the ruins and found the 22, they would never have made it here at all. Who then deserved the unique good luck? Harry and Draco exchanged glances, none eager to claim it. Seeing their awkwardness, Severus produced a dropper from his pocket and walked to the edge. "Don't be in a hurry." He spoke as he drew a few drops of the spring water into a glass vial. "The 22 that led us here came from a ruin of a dark wizard. Nicholas and I both think whoever placed this fountain had motives other than charity." "No dark wizard does anything out of kindness," someone murmured. Severus, a potioneer by trade, already had testing reagents on hand. While Lupin set Harry and Draco to lighting a fire and preparing dinner, Severus examined the liquid. After a moment, he looked up. The water can indeed confer good luck. Harry and Draco straightened instantly. "So it really works?" Severus shook his head. "I'm not finished. The water only works if the person who finds it is already unnaturally lucky." Their faces registered confusion. Severus explained patiently. "Everything that led us here was a chain of accidents and coincidences. I noticed an uproar of dragons and investigated. After we entered, Black was fortunate enough to find the cave. Then," he nodded at Harry, "you were fortunate enough to spot the hidden bridge, and Draco and Remus's earlier discovery in the Troll Valley helped with the maze." He spread his hands. "Many wizards might have followed behind us. Yet how many actually reached this place? Few or none besides us. Whoever planted the fountain intended to filter for those already unusually lucky." Lupin caught on. "They lure people who already have good luck to a place that supposedly grants more, and those people," Severus finished the thought, pointing at the spring, "bathe in the water and feel their luck amplified. The potion added to this spring is similar to Felix Felicis. It heightens perception and confidence for a time. Combined with the legend's psychological boost, those who bathe act bolder and succeed more often. Even when they fail, they rationalize it away." "So it does bring good luck," Draco insisted. "That should be enough." Severus's tone turned grave. "Do you remember the legend says the luck lasts only 3 years? Both boys had apparently forgotten. "How do you suppose the record keepers determined that those wizards lost their luck after 3 years? Neither boy could answer. Sirius, silent until now, sneered. "You can't tell a person's luck from the outside unless someone who used to be consistently lucky starts having a streak of bad luck. That's when you notice the change. Your godfather isn't stupid. He just throws his intelligence away at crucial moments." Severus gave a small, approving smile at Black's insight. "When we were in the forest, I asked Andrews about the fates of those who had bathed here. After 3 years of success, most of them developed health problems and faded from public life. I found something else in the water," Severus continued. He tapped his 34 against the liquid in the vial. A thread of dark green vapor rose and, for a heartbeat, shaped itself like a goat in midair. Harry and Draco stumbled back. "What is that?" Draco whispered. A curse, Severus said. A spell was placed in this spring to steal another's luck and transfer it to the caster. It's very old. I haven't seen anything like it in modern grimoires. I suspect its origin might trace back to Herpo. Harry went pale. Even a slow mind could follow now. So the legend was deliberately spread by that dark wizard to attract naturally lucky people. They bathe. The potion heightens them. Then the curse steals their luck and gives it to the one who set the trap. Exactly, Severus said. He poured the test liquid back into the fountain and looked at them. So, does anyone still want to try this fountain that brings good luck? Draco and Harry stepped back without thinking, their earlier eagerness gone. Master, I am your faithful servant. Master, I am your faithful servant. So we came all this way only to find a cursed spring? Harry looked deflated, disappointment plain on his face. Lupin smiled and patted his shoulder. Even if the spring is cursed, there are many rare herbs here. We can gather them. That would be a considerable treasure. Draco pouted as he scanned the flowers and plants. How much could these scraps be worth? Severus, the professional, gave an estimate. Some of these herbs are almost never seen in the magical world. They're priceless. Even with a conservative valuation, the items here are worth at least 7,000 to 10,000 galleons. Even Draco, who had witnessed Lucius's excesses, widened his eyes. That much? This is a low estimate. If we find reliable channels and sell slowly, they could fetch around 15,000 galleons. We'll be rich, Draco and Harry shouted, then ran toward the plants. Lupin caught them by the shoulders. Gathering and transplanting these requires expertise. You two watch. Let the adults show you how. What had started as a quest for the Fountain of Good Luck turned into an impromptu herbology lesson. Severus and Lupin worked the plants while teaching Draco and Harry to identify them. Night fell, and no one else arrived at the supposedly lucky spring. Severus realized then that their presence here might not have been pure luck. Someone had been guiding them, but he gave no sign of surprise. Harry fretted about other wizards stumbling on the spring and falling victim to its curse. Severus set up a sign near the water and wrote a clear warning in English. The spring is cursed. Then he and Lupin led Harry and Draco back down the mountain the way they had come. The return was uneventful. When they emerged through the stone arch, they found the wizards of Albania congregated around it. The entrance had been closed off, leaving later arrivals trapped outside. Many who had tried to reach the labyrinth came back empty-handed, unable to scale the cliff, stalled by an uncrossable river. Aside from Severus's small group, none had reached the maze. Reporters swarmed them, hungry for details. Harry and Draco, two children who wanted only to tell the truth, instinctively turned to speak of the cursed spring. Severus pulled them back, smiled easily with the reporters, and said they'd been thwarted by the river and failed to find the spring after searching. Afterward, in the tent, he explained why. If they don't see it themselves, no one will believe us, Severus said. Those reporters will claim we're lying to keep the fountain for ourselves. What should have been a simple business will become a mess. Harry, still half comprehending the subtleties of adult politics, persisted. So we're just pretending we don't know anything, Severus shrugged. Not entirely. We'll tell someone reliable. Before we leave this forest, I'll find the head Auror of Albania and inform him. After a modest supper, the boys, physically and mentally exhausted, went to bed. Lupin lingered by Severus, as if wanting to ask something, but Severus only shot a wary glance at the puffskein and motioned for him to wait. He returned to his bedroom. Once the flap closed, Ghost Snape, an internal voice Severus had carried for years, could no longer be silent. What are you waiting for? You've found him, right next to Potter. He could harm the boy at any moment. First, even if he had the ability, he wouldn't harm Harry, Severus said calmly. Relax. Remember what I told you today? His actions show that testing my loyalty matters more to him than drinking unicorn blood. You've proven your loyalty by your actions, Ghost Snape muttered. He must already believe you would have offered that pure blood if you'd thought the unicorn real. So why hasn't he acted? That's why he is the master, and you were only a servant, Severus replied dryly, and before Ghost Snape's anger could flare, he continued. He must know I'm not stupid. If I hadn't noticed the unicorn was an illusion, there'd be no need to hide. He will come to me tonight. For a long time, neither spoke. Minutes crawled by until nearly midnight when Severus felt the mark on his arm, the one that had lain dormant for 8 years, burning hot. He stared at his sleeve, then straightened as if awakened from a dream, surprise and a pinch of fear etching his face. "Master, Master, is that you? Have you returned?" he called into the empty room. Ghost Snape clenched invisible hands and cursed softly. "This damned liar, this actor." A chill wind lifted the tent curtains. Before Severus flickered something more transparent than a ghost, a figure like colored gas, its face unreadable. Its voice did not seem to come from a throat and was high and uncanny, and yet it was unmistakably Lord Voldemort's. "Fate is strange, isn't it?" the mist said. "I wondered which of my former followers would come seeking me. Bellatrix, Rodolphus, Rabastan, Augustus. I did not expect you, Severus, to be the first." Severus trembled. The face he wore for others, cold, empty, fell away, replaced by eager reverence. "Master, I have been looking for you. I tried everything. Today I finally found you. I finally—" Voldemort's tone remained flat. "What of those I named? They were captured and sent to Azkaban." Severus plunged into explanation. "After your disappearance, the Aurors hunted us. Some betrayed, some fled. The Lestranges, searching for you, captured 2 Longbottom Aurors trying to force your whereabouts from them. They were caught by the Aurors." He spoke rapidly, as if laying out a paper trail. "I used the Potter affair to gain Dumbledore's trust. I infiltrated Hogwarts, stayed near Dumbledore, and asked about you. It was the Grey Lady who told me stories, how you outwitted her to take Ravenclaw's diadem that led me here." Ghost Snape, listening, was baffled. The Grey Lady? But Severus pressed on, every word humble, every detail offered like a tribute. "Being near Dumbledore all these years has changed you," Voldemort said after a pause. "You are more loquacious than I remember." "Master, I did it to win Dumbledore's trust," Severus protested, "so he would leave Harry with me, so I could remain at Hogwarts without arousing suspicion. I planned this for years. Now everyone thinks I've reformed. They won't suspect I was always searching for you. Dumbledore and the Aurors will focus elsewhere. Right? If I can bring you back, whatever it takes, I will do it." His plea was convincing. Ghost Snape might have been deceived too, had he not known Severus's intent. Severus, as if remembering another point, rattled on. "Barty Crouch Jr. was captured and sent to Azkaban, but his father rescued him. He later rallied those of your followers who hadn't been caught and used your name to try to reunite the Death Eaters. The Ministry panicked and renewed the hunt. I sought him out and warned him that such public displays would doom us. He accused me of betrayal and of being the true loyalist. Because of him, I nearly failed to find you." Voldemort listened, then gave the only praise Severus hoped to hear. "Very good. You have done well, Severus. You have done better than the others. I will reward you." Ghost Snape allowed himself a brief, gleeful flare of satisfaction. He believed Voldemort had been convinced. Severus himself understood far better. A creature like this would never completely trust anyone. Praise was a tool to reinforce obedience. After 8 years, even a wizard's memory could be nudged back into servitude. "Severus," Voldemort said softly, almost conversational, "that woman brought this upon herself. I could not keep the promise I made to you, to kill her. Do you hold resentment for that?" Chapter 228. Strip-Eye injured my arm at the gym. When I straighten it, the joint hurts, so I'm taking today off. 229. Take me back to England. After Voldemort's question dropped into the quiet of the room, the bedroom fell utterly silent. Severus did not mistake the Dark Lord's less harsh tone for softness. He knew exactly why Voldemort had asked that. This was where his greatest caution toward Severus had begun. Before that night, 8 years ago, Severus had sought Dumbledore out, but he had also begged his master, had pleaded with Voldemort to spare Lily. His true aim had been the infant, Harry Potter. For a time, Voldemort had even considered sparing Lily to keep his promise to Severus, but Lily had died protecting her son, and that death made it impossible for Voldemort to keep what he had promised. If Voldemort were as powerful as before, he would have been indifferent to broken promises. Now he was weak, dependent on Severus, and needed to know where Severus stood. The question was a test, whether Severus still harbored resentment or had truly set it aside. The answer would determine how Voldemort dealt with him afterward. Severus kept his head down for a moment as if to hide the conflict in his face. then lifted it and met the Dark Lord's formless, gaseous stare. He spoke, earnest. Master, I will not lie. When I first heard of her death, I did resent you. But with your disappearance and the Auror's purge, I have been forced to sober up. Compared to our cause, what is a woman, especially one of so humble a birth? Our true aim is to remake the wizarding world. For that cause, your servant Severus Snape remains loyal. I will be your most faithful servant. Voldemort's clouded features shifted. The closest thing the formless thing had to a look of satisfaction. He wanted honesty more than absolute declarations. Loyalty could always be tested by power. Very good. I'm glad you told me this and that you have thought it through, Severus. His tone relaxed. Tell me, how did you gain Dumbledore's trust, win Potter to your side, and finally, how did you find me? Both Severus and the other Snape, the spectral Snape who watched in silence, let out inward breaths. Winning Voldemort's reluctant trust had been the hard part. Now the plan Severus had prepared could begin to be put into motion. Dumbledore believed me because of my connection to Lily, Severus began. I told him I had repented. He suspected you had not perished easily and wanted me near him for the future. But you know Dumbledore. You can never read his mind completely. Even after years at Hogwarts, I am not sure I had fully earned his trust. After I could no longer find you, I learned of the Albanian forest from the Ravenclaw ghost and knew I had to leave Britain. If I simply vanished, Dumbledore would be suspicious, so I devised a plan. Severus spoke as if showing off his cunning, as if currying favor. I changed my public image completely. I declared my repentance, resigned my position at Hogwarts, and traveled. I found Harry at his aunt and tricked him into trusting me, took him away from that home, and accepted him as my pupil. In Britain, I performed acts to prove I had truly changed. I asked Barty to cooperate discreetly and gather the remaining Death Eaters. He thought I'd truly betrayed you and tried to rally others against me. By a strange twist, his actions only helped convince the public I had cut ties with my past. Then I moved my operations. Dumbledore did not object to Potter following me. He asked Potter and then watched me. I went to France and paid respect to Nicolas Flamel, did things in Paris to keep up appearances, and then took Potter and the others under concealment to Albania. I was certain you would be here, and indeed I found you. Severus looked at Voldemort with fervor. Master, you will return and lead us again, won't you? Potter trusts me. Kill him at any time. There is nothing to stop us now, not even Dumbledore. Voldemort listened, and even for him, had to admire the thoroughness of Severus's strategy. From the beginning, Voldemort had seen in the Slytherin a rare mind. Unlike the fanatical or the weak-willed, Severus had brains, loyalty, and talent. 8 years had not broken him. If anything, his abilities and plans had improved. Excellent, Voldemort approved. All of it was well done, Severus, but you must not harm Potter. Keep the status quo, keep your public reputation and Dumbledore's trust. Severus looked puzzled, then asked, Do you mean I should remain close to Dumbledore and wait for an opportunity to eliminate him? If such an opportunity presents itself in the future, then yes, Voldemort replied. But my power is not yet restored and is still weakening. Do not tell anyone you found me. I trust no one but you, Severus. Severus's excitement flared. I will never betray you, Master. I will keep your secret and do everything to help you regain your strength. His expression grew urgent. But what about Potter? He is the one in the prophecy who will oppose you. Why don't we kill him now while he trusts me most? The spectral Snape felt a flicker of doubt at those words. What Severus was saying now might be the plain truth. His deception had always been geared toward bringing the Dark Lord back, not toward permanently eliminating the problem. Voldemort's reply was cold and decisive. He is mine. When I have recovered, I will kill him myself and end that ridiculous prophecy. I understand, Master, Severus said respectfully. Voldemort studied him. Then let me enter your body, Severus. I am too weak to leave this forest alone. You must take me out. The statement was not a request, but an order. Voldemort drifted closer, preparing to merge into Severus. At the last moment, Severus spoke. Master, if you wish me to keep my reputation in the wizarding world and Dumbledore's trust, I don't think you should inhabit my body. Voldemort's form stilled. The gaseous presence considered him for a long beat before answering. You are unwilling? No. Severus shook his head emphatically. I am very willing. There is nothing more honorable for me than to host you. But right now I am not alone. Harry Potter is with me, and so are Remus Lupin and Sirius Black. You know them, Dumbledore's allies and close friends of the Potters. Nicholas Flamel is here too. If you and I share a body now, they will almost certainly notice. Severus pleaded plainly. If I'm exposed, it's one thing, but your plan would be ruined, and we couldn't return to Britain. There must be someone to take me out now, Voldemort snapped, colder than before. Even if they are likely to discover it, there is no other way. You must carry me from this place. Master, Severus's voice broke off as if struck by a sudden thought. He jumped up, rummaged through a cabinet by the bookshelf, and triumphantly pulled out an old teacup, cradling it like a treasure. This can protect your weakening spirit. It will let me take you out of the Albanian forest. The spectral Snape's eyes widened. All the doubts about Severus's loyalties vanished at once. The teacup was Flamel's gift, an alchemical vessel once bound by a banshee's haunt. Flamel had reworked the curse into function. The cup could contain a spiritual presence, and whether that presence could leave later depended entirely on the person holding the cup. If Voldemort agreed to enter it, his escape would be subject to Severus's will. Voldemort peered at the cup. What is this? An alchemical item Nicholas Flamel gave me, Severus answered. A banshee's spirit used to dwell in it before Flamel altered it. Given your condition, Master, it will preserve your state and hold you until we return. Severus opened the lid and held the cup up to the floating form. The Dark Lord's gaseous shape wavered as he inspected it, then reached out and touched the rim. The formless cloud was quickly drawn into the cup. Severus's other hand, the one holding the lid, trembled as he fought the urge to slam it shut and trap Voldemort forever. For a moment, the Dark Lord seemed to be entirely within the cup. Then, confirming the function, the gaseous figure reappeared above the cup as if to demonstrate. Voldemort's voice, low and pleased, filled the room. Very good. An excellent item. You have done well, Severus. I will wait inside until you take me out. Take me back to Britain. The Albania forest was anything but quiet late that night. The appearance of the golden unicorn and the discovery of the fountain of good luck had driven a crowd of wizards to the site, and there was no reason for them to leave. Severus and his group came back from that secret realm relatively early. Many other wizards had not yet returned. That drew every magical reporter from Albania and the surrounding regions. They clustered around the now deactivated stone gate, conducting follow-up interviews and snapping photos of every wizard who emerged. Everyone waited for the luckiest person, the one who'd reached the mountaintop and bathed in the spring, to appear. A first-hand scoop would send tomorrow's paper sales through the roof. As time passed, more wizards came back with news of failure. The two luckiest among them had reached the front of the labyrinth together, but without a map and hindered by the flora inside, had become hopelessly lost and returned empty-handed. Among the failed returnees was a particularly ill-mannered pair, one tall, one short. When they stepped out of the stone gate, the taller, younger one looked furious. A reporter moved in to ask what they'd gained in the secret realm, and the taller wizard waved him off in disgust, shouting in English for them all to get lost. Several insulted reporters angrily ordered photographers to take their pictures. Even if no one later claimed to have bathed in the fountain, they'd run an article about the miserable manners of some wizards who turned on reporters after failing to find anything. The two now resented wizards withdrew to a secluded corner and began to vent. Why did we even go in? Did we go there to find a fountain of good luck? No, we went to find the master. How could the master possibly be in that spring? You used me as a test and deliberately threw me in that river. Did you never think it might be cursed to drag things under and drown them? What am I to you, a lab rat for your experiments? I'm starting to think Roll didn't disappear on his own. Did you use him like that and kill him somewhere where no one would find out? The angry wizard was Perkins, a Death Eater who'd come from Britain. He and Barty had disguised themselves as Albanian aurors and slipped into the underground ruins. Learning that Severus had guided the aurors to the ruins and taken something from deep within convinced them further that if their master were alive, he must be here. After emerging from the ruins, they began scouring the forest. Barty's mind was sharper than most Death Eaters. He'd planned, if they found nothing in the forest within 3 days, they would locate Severus and trail him quietly. If Severus made a discovery, they could intercept it from the shadows. Only 1 day into the search, something big happened. The golden unicorn raced through the woods and opened the stone gate to the Fountain of Good Luck near a troll camp by the riverbank. Neither Perkins nor Barty cared about this legendary spring. A few years of luck could never compare to the rewards of finding their master. But Barty smelled opportunity. From Albanian aurors, they'd learned Severus had led them to the underground ruins and taken an item from deep inside. That ruin was clearly tied to the fountain. Barty reasonably deduced Severus might be behind the opening of this secret realm, so they rushed into the crowd and pushed through the stone gate. They had decent luck at first. They found a cave heading up the otherwise sheer slope to the mountaintop. But at the top, they were blocked by a river they could not cross. No matter what they tried, there was no way across. Barty suggested Perkins try swimming. After Perkins tossed a branch into the river and watched it sink, he shook his head. He wouldn't risk it. Before he could refuse outright, Barty kicked him in. The river sank things. Perkins fought and swallowed water, but Barty hauled him out. Perkins was livid. Perkins didn't trust Barty fully, but he'd considered him a temporarily reliable leader. And this leader had shoved him into danger without a word. If this was what Barty did when things went wrong, what next? Would he fire an unforgivable at his back? Perkins's accusations and shouts met Barty's usual calm indifference. "You don't need to get so hot with me," Barty said. "If we find the master, whether it costs you or me, it will be worth it." "You only know how to talk," Perkins snarled. "Where is the master now? We couldn't cross that river. Even if we could, is the master just sitting at that spring waiting for us? You messed things up in Britain, found nothing, and lost roll. Now it's the same here." Barty's voice stayed even. "Then we'll find Snape. If we can't find anything, we'll follow him. If he gets something, it's as good for us as it is for him. I'm done with you. I'm going back to Britain. Staying here with you is a waste of time. I'm always waiting for you to sell me out. You'd betray even your own father. Who else wouldn't you abandon?" Anger scrambled Perkins's words before he could stop them. The moment the sentence left his mouth, he regretted it. His face went pale, and he instinctively covered his lips, 2 steps back. Barty's expression hadn't shifted through the tirade until those last words. His eyes narrowed. There was a sudden hush. Barty's hand slid, unnoticed, to the wand hiding in his sleeve. He drew a breath to speak when both Death Eaters froze, stunned. Then they clutched their own arms and looked at one another. Each had the same mark on his forearm, a mark that could only be summoned and activated by one being. The mark, dormant for 8 years, had just throbbed to life. Perkins's eyes went wide. He could hardly speak. A strange light sparked in Barty's eyes. "It's the master," he breathed. "He's summoning us. He's near. He knows we came to find him." Perkins stopped talking about going back to Britain. Barty seemed to forget every grievance. Both were suddenly ecstatic. The mark's sensation meant they hadn't come to the wrong place. Their master was here, and he knew someone had come. By the next morning, the lakeside was still packed. Although a night had passed, no one had yet returned from the Stone Gate's secret realm. As long as someone hadn't come back, it was possible someone had reached the Fountain of Good Luck. Severus, having risen early, was brushing his teeth while watching the group who'd stayed overnight, still buzzing about the fountain and speculating who had been lucky enough to bathe in it. "They've made a complete mess of this place," Andrews said. He, like Severus, had no interest in the fountain and felt a little disgusted by the crowd. "When the reporters came yesterday, they kept pestering me, asking who built the houses the trolls live in, why anyone would build houses for trolls. I sent them away, but Lulu had a hard time keeping the trolls from being frightened and getting rough with the wizards." Severus patted him on the shoulder. "Don't worry, they'll only be here a few more days at most." Andrews believed him. He turned and saw Lupin already up, packing their tent. He started to protest. "You're leaving already. Weren't you looking for something? We're leaving without finding anything." Lupin and Black, lying nearby. Both turned to look at Severus. He smiled, faint and mysterious. "We're saying goodbye to you, Pike. We're leaving Albania this morning for Britain. Thank you for your hospitality and for helping with the trolls. Don't worry, we won't forget to take Lockhart with us." Andrews, Pike, was surprised, but recovered quickly. He hugged Severus. "No, it's I who should thank you and your group. Without you, those trolls would have died in that ruin." Severus took the chance to find Kabruna, the Albanian auror supervising the site, and warned him about the fountain's curse. "You found the fountain of good luck?" Kabruna said, shocked. Severus shrugged. "My luck was a little better, but the spring is tied to a scheme left by Herpo. I've confirmed from an elder that Herpo died over 1,000 years ago. Whatever plans he left behind are useless now, but they can still harm people. This is Albania's territory. I'll leave the precautions to you." "I'm going back to Britain," Kabruna said. "You're going back?" Severus looked a little surprised too, but he tossed the repaired whistle to Kabruna. "Since this thing was dug up here, returning it to you is returning it to its rightful owner. It was what summoned the golden unicorn to open the stone gate. It's useless now. I tried blowing it again this morning, and no unicorn appeared." Having finished his explanations, Severus returned to the troll camp. Lupin and the others had finished packing. They could leave at once. Harry looked reluctant. "We're leaving so suddenly?" "Teacher, weren't you searching for something? We're going home without having found anything?" Lupin and Black glanced at Severus again. Severus smiled. "This trip has been a bumper harvest. Britain, Diagon Alley, Gringotts, the Goblin's VIP reception room, the Gringotts Cursebreaker, the Goblin Griphook watched the VIP across from him with a peculiar expression. While I cannot fathom why you are so insistent that your distant nephew inherit the Lestrange family vault, I must remind you again, Mr. Malfoy. Gringotts' inheritance rules state a vault can only be passed to an heir if the owner is deceased. At present, the Lestranges are not dead. They are merely—" Lucius cut him off impatiently. He had heard the goblin's litany often enough to have grown calluses on his ears. "They are locked in a prison full of dementors and will never get out in this lifetime. There is no difference between that and being dead. Whether they're alive or dead is irrelevant. Someone must take over the Lestrange fortune." "Do you think I came here for greed?" he went on. "A member of the Lestrange family sought me out and asked me to represent them, to pursue legal measures to inherit that vault." He produced a piece of parchment, the script neat and ornate, a signature at the bottom. "Those imprisoned are Bellatrix Lestrange, Rodolphus Lestrange, and Rabiston Lestrange. They are the legal heirs of the Lestrange family, but they are now permanently confined in Azkaban with no possibility of release, and they have no children. Under Gringotts' rules, Rodolphus's first cousin once removed is first in line. This is his letter of authorization, granting me full responsibility to manage the inheritance." He fixed Griphook with a sharp, dangerous look. Years among high society had taught Lucius precisely how to handle creatures like the goblin. "Your constant refusals make me suspect Gringotts has already interfered with that vault." At that, Griphook's face became suddenly stern. "That is an insult to Gringotts' integrity and a baseless accusation, sir. Even if you are a VIP, such words could require an official apology if spread." "An apology?" Lucius tapped the armrest with a fingertip and smiled coldly. "You're clutching the Lestrange vault so tightly. Why should I apologize? If this becomes public and the Daily Prophet reports it, you'll be the ones blamed. Why can't the vault be inherited according to the rules?" Griphook could only repeat himself. "Because the owners, Mr. Rodolphus Lestrange and Mrs. Bellatrix Lestrange, are still alive." "What's the difference?" Lucius snapped. "The Dementors drove them mad years ago. They are reduced to husks. If they languish in prison for 20, 30, 100 years, is the Lestrange vault supposed to remain unclaimed forever?" He let the words land with cruel relish. "You're stalling, waiting for the rest of the Lestrange line to starve, so that when the family dies out, you can legally claim the vault yourselves, aren't you? That is a very grave charge against Gringotts, Mr. Malfoy." Griphook's fingers twisted together. Lucius's relentless pressure had put him on the defensive. "Perhaps a compromise. If you bring your client, the cousin, to the ministry to apply for a visit, and you obtain the key and their permission, Gringotts would transfer ownership. Lucius regarded him with cold amusement. Are you joking? Griffook gave a small, shocked sound. I am certainly not. Do you think there's anything to discuss with two lunatics locked in Azkaban for 8 years who have lost their minds? Lucius went on. They want everyone to suffer with them. How could they possibly authorize the vault to be inherited by someone else? Griphook's expression crumpled. The already unpleasant features of his face drew further into themselves. Gringotts has no precedent for transferring a vault while the owner is still alive, and your so-called heir doesn't even have the vault key. Lucius showed no surprise. He had expected this. Much of Gringotts' business depends on the support of the Malfoys, the Carrows, the Knotts, the Perkins, the Selwyns, the Greengrasses, our great families. It's not just deposits. The bank relies on us for many things. The Ministry of Magic we also influence. Families like ours care most about preserving their wealth. Do you think I'm speaking only for the Malfoys? If the Lestrange vault problem isn't handled, what will the other families think? Will they put their trust in Gringotts? Griffook grew uneasy. Times had changed. After the rebellion was crushed, the goblins' autonomy had been curtailed. Though they still ran Gringotts, they could not act with total independence and had to consider the attitudes of the pure-blood families and the ministry. Yet Lucius's request truly had no precedent. If Gringotts agreed and something went wrong later, the bank's centuries-old reputation would be at stake. Lucius saw the hesitation and pressed on, impatient. Very well, let's step back. Taking the heirs to Azkaban to get a key and permission is impossible, but you could get a certificate from the ministry declaring the Lestranges incompetent and unable to manage their affairs, permitting the estate to be dealt with and the vault distributed. Before Griffook could reply, Lucius rose. This is my final bottom line. Regardless, the vaults Gringotts manages still belong to wizarding families. The laws of the Ministry of Magic will override Gringotts' own regulations. Griffook's face showed the inner struggle. My authority does not allow me to promise that. I must seek instructions from above. Lucius began toward the door. Then send word to whoever can make the decision at once. Either cling stubbornly to your so-called Gringotts rules or follow the ministry's arrangements. As Lucius left, Griffook hurried after him up the vault staircases. This was not his level of decision. No single goblin could decide such a matter alone. Outside the bank, the impatience and coldness drained from Lucius's face and were replaced by a small, sinister smile. Perhaps he lacked the greatest magical gifts. Perhaps he had no loyalty beyond his family's interests. Perhaps he was two-faced and untrustworthy. But in intrigue and the manipulation of power, few in the wizarding world could match him. Before Severus left Britain with Draco, he had made 2 requests of Lucius, and the other sitting on the fence purebloods: money and the golden cup in the Lestrange vault. Money was easy. With the wealth of the pureblood families, even Severus could never exhaust it. The cup was trickier. If Bellatrix, Rodolphus, or Rabistan had not been sentenced to life in Azkaban, it would have been difficult. Now they were confirmed by the ministry to be imprisoned for life, and that gave Lucius and the others considerable leeway. There was no need for clumsy robberies. They could work within the system to effect a legal transfer. Obtaining a ministry certificate would be almost effortless with the right connections. Lucius knew that in less than 3 days he could produce a ministry order. At that point, the goblins at Gringotts would have little ground to stand on. Lucius was certain they had no intention or stomach for embezzling a wizard's vault. Relaxing as he wondered where Severus had taken his son, he hadn't received a letter in days. Lucius's attention was suddenly taken by a cluster of red-haired figures pushing into his field of view. Hold on to this cauldron properly, Ron. If you drop it and force me to go back and shamefully find someone to fix it again, you'll be cleaning the garden for a week. I know, Mum, it won't fall. Arthur, we need to buy some good food for Scabbers. Before Fred and George left for Hogwarts, they said the rat was so drowsy, maybe from malnutrition. He's very old now. He needs nourishment. Ah, don't worry, dear. Severus told me before he left that Scabbers' lethargy is a side effect of that potion. He just needs to rest more to recuperate. This won't last much longer. If you can't afford the food, perhaps the magical menagerie has some leftovers the rats eat, Lucius said, with a mocking edge. The Weasleys, walking down Diagon Alley toward the leaky cauldron, turned at the comment. Arthur's face darkened when he recognized Lucius's false smile. "Thank you for your concern, Mr. Malfoy, but we can care for our own pets without your advice. Is ministry money so plentiful it can be wasted?" Lucius sneered, looking Arthur up and down. He had always despised the family for their blood traitor reputation. "Today isn't a holiday. I submitted a leave request in accordance with regulations, and it was approved by Mr. Webster," Arthur replied coolly. "If you're interested in the process, feel free to check at the ministry, if you have the authority to do so." Lucius shrugged and turned away. "I'll be sure to check on your work at the ministry." Watching him go, Ron, who still clutched the cauldron, curled his lip. "He's unbearable. We don't have anything to do with him, and he always finds an excuse to insult us. If George and the others were here, they'd give him a piece of their minds." Arthur only patted his son and smiled. "We don't need to worry about what others say, just be ourselves." They were about to head for the leaky cauldron and then home to the burrow by fireplace when an owl found them in the crowd and dropped a letter into Arthur's hand. "Who is it from?" Molly asked, puzzled. "Has the ministry canceled your leave?" Arthur didn't answer right away. He opened the envelope, scanned the note, and then a genuine smile spread across his face. "Severus says he's back in Britain. He's coming to visit the burrow tomorrow evening, and he's bringing a few friends. I caught him." For Hogwarts Castle in September, the 2 months of desolation finally ended. The return of older students and the arrival of first years restored the castle to its usual bustle and youthful chaos. This year, the students had 3 main things to talk about. First was Severus Snape, former head of Slytherin and potions master, long the undisputed occupant of the most hated teacher throne, and the strange transformation everyone had heard about over the summer. Most had listened to the live broadcast of his testimony at the trial and were willing to believe he was different now. A few, though, still thought it impossible. The potions master who prowled the corridors with that forever gloomy face, as if everyone owed him money, couldn't have truly changed. Even if he were different now, they expected him to snap back to his old self eventually. Second was Horace Slughorn, who had filled Snape's former posts as head of Slytherin and potions master. Slughorn was known as a genial, rotund man who favored not only students from distinguished families, but also those of modest origin with real talent. The Gryffindor prefects breathed a little easier. No longer would they have to fear points being snapped away for a single missteered stir. For once, a student in potions who performed well could expect an ungrudging compliment and a little house point, whatever house they belonged to. That change alone made many grateful, whether they believed Snape's conversion or not. Third were the freshmen themselves. A pair of loud, red-haired twins had made a scandal at the sorting and ensured everybody knew their names before the end of the first day. "George, no spells in the corridors. Filch told me he's warned you, and you get away every time." Professor McGonagall's face was taut as she scolded the boy. "School's barely been in session a month. Professor Flitwick hasn't even taught you a proper incantation yet. Waving your wands around will only cause trouble." The boy spread his hands innocently. "Professor, you've got the wrong man. Filch caught George, but I'm Fred." McGonagall had already produced her wand. 10 points from Gryffindor. Don't try that with me. I don't care whether you're George or Fred. If you're together in mischief, you both suffer the consequences." As McGonagall reached to seize the delinquent, whoever he was, the Hufflepuff ghost, the fat friar, glided up. "Ah, Professor McGonagall, Dumbledore asked me to pass along a message. He wishes to see you in his office when you have a moment. There's something he'd like to discuss." While McGonagall turned to speak with the ghost, the red-haired boy bolted. McGonagall did not bother to pursue him. The twins could run, but they could not hide forever. Soon after, on a morning without lessons, she made her way to the headmaster's office. When she arrived, the room was already full. "Snape?" She saw Severus at once, and her eyes widened. She knew Lupin and Harry well enough, but Draco was unfamiliar, as was the strange black dog at their feet. Severus had been absent for nearly a month. After rescuing Nicolas Flamel in France, the press lost track of him, and his sudden appearance at Hogwarts had stirred a storm of speculation. Good morning, Professor McGonagall, Severus said nonchalantly, helping himself to some of Dumbledore's private sweets. Lupin waved. Harry, who had spent a couple of days at Hogwarts earlier in the summer, regarded the stern-looking man with cautious familiarity. Draco did not know McGonagall at all. I asked you here because Severus told me something he experienced while he was away, Dumbledore said. I thought it best you heard it too, since you once served as head of house for the four of them and know them better than I do. The four of them, McGonagall frowned. Which four? Potter and the other three, Dumbledore replied. McGonagall went very still. She turned toward Lupin, her eyes wavering with an emotion she clearly could not hide. The four of them. Together. Something seemed to click into place for her, and her expression hardened. Is it Sirius Black? Did the escaped Black run into Snape and the others while they were gone? Dumbledore nodded slightly, a small smile touching his lips. You guessed correctly. They met Black. In fact, they brought him here. He is right in front of us. McGonagall scanned Severus, Lupin, Harry, and Draco again. Then her gaze fell on the dog. Black did not prolong the suspense. The voice from the collar, like the one the broadcast had used, rang out in a clear male tone. Long time no see, Professor McGonagall. She did not understand why he remained in dog form or why he spoke through his collar, but the fact that he stood there turned her breath sharp and brought a flood of questions. What is going on? What happened? You caught Black, and then you turned him into a dog as punishment. He's like you. Well, I learned today that back then 3 of the Potter group were like you. They all mastered the extremely difficult Transfiguration to become animagi, Dumbledore said. They learned to be animagi illegally. McGonagall's voice was fierce. They kept it secret and didn't register with the Ministry of Magic. Her eyes, sharp and furious as a lioness, made Lupin and the dog look away guiltily rather than meet her stare. No wonder he escaped Azkaban. No wonder the Aurors searched and found nothing. To think my students used what I taught them like this, using it to commit crimes. I think you should calm down, Minerva, Dumbledore said quietly. I asked you here so you could hear the full story about Sirius. Severus told me something startling after he brought Black back. Please sit down, Dumbledore went on. Would you like some of my lemon and honey cordial? It does wonders when one's temper is ruffled. McGonagall sat, sour-faced but refusing the cordial. She took a cup of tea instead and braced herself as Dumbledore recounted the story Severus had related earlier. Her expression moved through surprise and shock, returning finally to anger. Snape used Veritaserum to make him tell the truth? She demanded, eyes fixed on Black. The dog lowered his head, crestfallen. He had imagined that telling the truth would bring a teacherly reconciliation, not this renewed storm of reproach. Yes, Professor McGonagall. I can assure you the Veritaserum was effective, Severus said with a shrug. That confirmed it. McGonagall poured forth a torrent of reproach. So, for the save guilt toward your friends, you abandoned your godson when his parents died and hid in Azkaban for what you called atonement. I have never seen such selfishness. Sirius Black, I thought you and James were best friends, but you never thought of him. Never. Black, having already been chastised by Severus in Albania, could only hang his head in silence. We aren't here to decide who's right or wrong, Dumbledore said, though his tone made it clear Black was not to be let off lightly. I only hope we do not remain trapped by feelings and forget what must be done. Emotions are important to a teacher, of course, but they are not everything. Whether Black took that to heart was for him alone to know. After Dumbledore had explained the situation, he moved on to the practical difficulties they faced. Veritaserum can prove his account, but the ministry is another matter. Testimony gained with Veritaserum without ministry approval has no legal standing in the wizarding world. As a member of the Wizengamot, Dumbledore knew the law well. Moreover, given the temperament of the officials, and after the blows the ministry has taken lately, they have little incentive to reopen a case unless there's direct, public evidence. Lupin's face clouded. Harry looked troubled. One wanted to clear an old friend's name, the other wanted to know the truth about his parents' betrayal. Black, in his usual reckless way, said, "They can't catch me anyway. There's no need to prove anything." "Do you want to hide for the rest of your life?" To let Harry Potter never know he has a godfather. McGonagall snapped, which made Black shrink back. Despite his lawless nature, his former head of house still had authority over him. Severus interjected then. There may be no need to force the issue now. Who's to say a turning point won't present itself later? Dumbledore's eyes fixed on him. Severus smiled, unembarrassed by the attention, and Dumbledore, who read faces as well as he did books, understood. Very well. We'll wait on that, Dumbledore agreed. As for the other matter you mentioned, about Gilderoy Lockhart stealing memories and passing them off as his own, you want me to take him to the ministry? Severus nodded. He helped me in Albania, and I promised I wouldn't have him dragged to the Aurors. It might be better coming from you. That I can do, Dumbledore said. As a member of the Wizengamot, I have responsibilities in such cases. They talked then, trading travel anecdotes from France and Albania, while the portraits dozed and then pricked awake again at the change in tone. Severus caught Lupin's eye. Lupin rose, gathering Black, Harry, and Draco to take them off to see Hagrid. McGonagall left too, to prepare for a fourth-year class, leaving only Severus and Dumbledore in the room. The atmosphere shifted. Even the portraits seemed to lean in. Both men knew the conversation to come was the one that mattered most. Dumbledore regarded Severus with the air of a man expecting a gift. I wonder what surprise you've brought me this time. Severus did not produce any dramatic object. He looked at Dumbledore with his usual cool composure and said simply, I've caught him. Silence fell over the headmaster's office. Severus had not explicitly named who he was, but Dumbledore had enough context to understand. From the items Severus had brought him before, Dumbledore already suspected that Lord Voldemort had split his soul into multiple Horcruxes. At first, he had assumed Severus had simply captured another one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. Then Severus continued. I found him in the forests of Albania, Severus said. He was in an extremely weakened state. Even with Horcruxes preventing his outright death, he could only linger, neither fully alive nor fully dead. At that, Dumbledore's expression froze. His usually inscrutable blue eyes went very solemn. Surprise and something like dread showed plainly. You say you caught his. Not his something, just him, Severus corrected, and he opened a battered old suitcase. He took out a tattered, ancient-looking teacup. I got this from Nicholas Flamel. It's designed to bind spirits, Severus explained. I tricked the remnant of Voldemort's soul into it. As long as the lid isn't opened, he can't get out. Dumbledore folded his hands and watched him with a mixture of curiosity and concern. So before you went to Albania, you already knew what state he was in? Severus did not deny it. He knew Dumbledore would try to place the pieces himself. Revealing too much of his own methods would only make Dumbledore's deductions less reliable. More or less, he said, then steered the conversation back to Voldemort. Lord Voldemort himself is caught, but the Horcruxes he created have not all been recovered. Dumbledore had intended to wait until Severus returned to study exactly how many Horcruxes had been made, but now he asked directly, Besides the diary and the diadem you brought me, how many are left? Severus listed them without theatrics. There's the Resurrection Stone Ring, the Hufflepuff Cup, the Slytherin Locket, and, he paused for a few seconds before finishing, Harry Potter. At the last name, Dumbledore visibly stiffened. The portraits on the walls, which had been watching in silence, collectively gasped. Even the spirit of Snape, Ghost Snape, who had been inhabiting Severus's body, was stunned. The ghost was the first to erupt. You kept this from me. Why didn't you tell me something this important from the start? Severus ignored him, his eyes locked on Dumbledore. Dumbledore's reaction was not as explosive as the ghost's, but his furrowed brow showed how deeply he was shaken. I studied the two items you sent me, the diary from Riddle's school days and Ravenclaw's diadem. Both were Horcruxes, and both bear the most fundamental signatures of the dark arts. They are both cursed in ways that can be lethal. Dumbledore said, voice grave, that Harry might also be a Horcrux was terrifying and crucial. Even with Severus's reputation for accuracy, Dumbledore needed more confirmation. Severus began to explain what had happened in Albania. After I arrived in the forest with Harry, we found a puffskein he had picked up. Voldemort, unable to regain a proper body, was hiding on that puffskein. One night later, Harry told me he had a dream so vivid it felt real. In the dream, he was a snake wandering the forest and speaking parcel tongue, called a basilisk. The night after I encountered Voldemort and tricked him into the cup, I asked Voldemort how he had found that basilisk and how he summoned it. His description matched exactly what Harry had dreamed. I suspect that the night Voldemort rested on that puffskein, he relived the memories of possessing a snake and finding the basilisk. Through the fragment of Voldemort's soul lodged in Harry, Harry made a weak connection to Voldemort's consciousness and experienced the same dream. Severus went on. That by itself is not proof. But on the night that Harry's parents were killed, Lily's protection caused Voldemort's killing curse to rebound. In that moment, without Voldemort's knowledge, a Horcrux was formed. His soul split. One half remained in Harry, making him a living Horcrux. The other half fled, and under the magic of the Horcrux, eventually ended up in Albania. Harry is a Horcrux, but he's unlike the others. He does not bear a powerful curse like the diary or the diadem. What he has taken on are certain traits of Voldemort. For example, he became a Parselmoth and has sensory connections with Voldemort. But most importantly, Severus's voice trailed off, leaving the unspoken truth hanging. Horcruxes must be destroyed before their master can truly be killed. If Harry is a Horcrux, destroying Voldemort will require dealing with the piece of soul inside Harry. The headmaster's office was very still. The portraits remained mute, eyes wide. After a long pause, Dumbledore steadied himself and said softly, "Do you have a way?" Severus gave the only answer he knew. "There is only one method I know that was feasible in the original timeline, and it is extremely dangerous. You might consider it a way of sending Harry to his death." Ghost Snape's agitation was evident, though he forced himself not to interrupt. Dumbledore's voice was steady now. "Tell me. You are aware, Professor, that Lily's protection on Harry has always been effective. Even if Voldemort is resurrected, he cannot harm Harry. He cannot touch him." Severus was calm. If the current half-man, half-ghost Voldemort uses Harry's blood in that ancient ritual to regain a human body, Lily's protection will enter Voldemort's body along with the blood. At that point, if Voldemort casts the killing curse on Harry, there is a strong chance it will not be able to kill Harry himself, only the soul fragment hidden within him. After Severus spoke, the room was silent long enough that the idea had to settle for everyone to absorb. Ghost Snape looked almost dazed. He had never considered this as a possible solution. "Of course," Severus added. "I can't be certain. Many variables could change the outcome. Harry's courage and love, or whether the ring in your possession is involved. I can't guarantee anything." Severus shrugged. His uncertainty only tightened Dumbledore's brow further. If Ghost Snape had been corporeal, he would have visibly swayed. Finally, Dumbledore exhaled and let his expression soften. "Our greatest advantage is that Voldemort himself is under our control. Whether he is dead or barely alive, he can no longer act to endanger the world. That gives us almost endless time." Severus leaned back and nodded. "Indeed, if we ultimately cannot remove the soul fragment from Harry, we could seal the teacup away entirely, keep Voldemort trapped in that in-between state until Harry dies naturally. But," he added, "in every tale I know, such sealings carry hidden dangers. It's best to resolve this once and for all." He stood. "I'll leave this problem with you. I cannot do everything myself, otherwise the so-called greatest wizard of the 20th century might start to feel a little underemployed, wouldn't he?" Dumbledore's face broke into a small smile. "I never claimed such a reputation. You are the first to suggest it, so I suppose it doesn't matter if I am unworthy of the name." Severus raised an eyebrow. "Is that so? Perhaps I misremembered. When you're exposed to too much information, it's hard to verify every detail." He took the teacup back from the desk. "I'll take Voldemort with me for a bit. There are some fence-sitters I need to convince. I'll use him to bolster the confidence of those who are on the fence, and then take care of Barty's group." "He won't be able to escape," Severus added. Nicholas modified the teacup. "Unless certain counter-charms are used, wherever he runs the cup will pull him back." Dumbledore had no objection to Severus's plan. After all, Severus had captured the creature. He watched Severus prepare to leave and, curious, asked one last question as Severus reached the door. "Will there ever be a day when I can truly know who you are?" Severus did not slow. He heard the question but offered no answer. The burrow had been busy all afternoon. After Severus's letter arrived in Diagon Alley, Molly had taken Arthur and Ron out to buy a batch of ingredients the family only used for feasts. Back home, the only children left were Ron and Ginny, and Molly set them to work. She made them clean the garden from top to bottom. Everything had to be perfect for tonight's dinner. Arthur, under her strict orders, stowed away the muggle contraptions he tinkered with in the yard so the guests wouldn't get the wrong impression. Molly had been cooking since 3 in the afternoon. By 4, Ron and Ginny had finished the chores and collapsed onto the sofa for a moment's rest, only to be interrupted when a flash of green fire erupted in the fireplace and a stream of people began to step out. 2 boys' voices argued all the while. "This fireplace is really narrow. You're squashing me. Get out, move it." "You're the one squashing me. We're both stuck. If you don't take a step back, neither of us can get out." Ron and Ginny had seen Harry and Draco at the Leaky Cauldron. They'd come away with a good impression of Harry. Draco's reception was more lukewarm, largely because of the trouble with his father, Lucius. Severus Snape, however, made a favorable impression too. They hadn't been to Hogwarts yet and couldn't share Percy and Charlie's complicated feelings, but at the Leaky Cauldron, Snape had bought them fruit soda, and that mattered. "Mr. Snape, good afternoon." And "Mr. Lupin, oh, my goodness, you actually have a dog," Ginny squealed. Ron jumped up awkwardly, all excitement, and noticed Sirius Black at Lupin's side. Ginny ran off to fetch Molly, shouting for her to tell everyone the guests were here. Harry, having just arrived at the burrow, took everything in with the sort of curious awe he always showed. He had seen many wizarding homes with Snape, but no 2 were alike. Draco scowled at the cramped, cluttered rooms. He'd learned to bite back the worst of his remarks after spending time with Snape, but his lips still curled in distaste. Snape began looking around and, not seeing something he expected, asked Ron directly, "How's your family pet's mental state?" Ron's face went long. "Scabbers hasn't been right lately. Dad gives him the potion you sent every day, but he just sleeps most of the time. When he's awake, he just lies in a corner of the attic, staring." Snape's expression softened. "Don't worry, I can cure him this time." "He's really old," Ron added. "George and Fred didn't even dare take him to Hogwarts last year. They said he might not make it past Christmas." "Where is he now?" Snape asked. "He should still be in the attic." "Go get him down," Snape said. "I'll have a look at him in a moment." Ron didn't hesitate. He obviously cared about the rat, even if he sometimes forgot that. After a quick greeting to Harry, he darted up to fetch Scabbers. Molly and Arthur returned from the yard just then. Ginny hid shyly behind them. Arthur's voice boomed as they came in. "Welcome. Welcome to the burrow." He grinned, hair untidy and robes splattered with what looked like engine grease. His hands bore the same stains. He moved to hug Snape, then realized and laughed awkwardly, using a cleaning charm on himself before shaking Snape's hand. "I've been hearing about your exploits all over Britain. You rescued Nicholas Flamel, didn't you? You really put those French wizards to shame." "Just our luck, mostly," Snape said. "You've done so much in 2 months. It can't all be luck," Arthur replied. Before conversation could go further, a loud explosion echoed from outside. Molly, in the middle of getting a handkerchief to help Harry and Draco scrub soot off themselves, snapped her head toward Arthur in dismay. "You spent the whole afternoon cleaning, and this is what you cleaned up." Arthur paled a little. "I have to go and check. Must be an engine problem. It shouldn't be." He trailed off, then hurried outside. Snape gave the others a nod. "I'll go too. I might be able to help." After they left, Molly finished helping Harry and Draco clean and went to the kitchen to prepare dinner, Lupin walking in with her to offer help. Molly stopped short and let out a small exclamation. She had never seen such a large dog. The adults left the living room, and with the older ones occupied, Ginny finally worked up the courage to pester Harry and Draco about their trip. Draco sat up straight and began to boast about the highlights of their adventure, animated and proud. Ron came down from the attic at last, cradling a limp, sleeping Scabbers. "Where's Mr. Snape?" he asked. "There was an explosion at Mr. Weasley's workshop," someone said. "He went with Mr. Weasley to check it out. They should be back soon." Harry glanced at the rat and tried to find something complimentary to say about the Weasley's pet, but facing the balding little creature, he could only manage, This rat has a very peculiar look. It used to be Percy's, Ron explained. He took him to Hogwarts nearly every year. He's missing a toe, he's old, he's losing hair, but he's a competent pet all the same. The big dog, lounging by the sofa, lifted an ear at Ron's words, opened its eyes, and looked straight at Scabbers. In that instant, the animal's fur lifted as if struck by lightning. Draco sneered. If that were in a pet shop, they'd have to give me 5 galleons to take it. Ron frowned, not understanding. You'd pay 5 galleons for it? No, Draco said with an annoyed curl of his lip. The shop would have to give me 5 galleons to take it. Before Ron could reply, the massive dog sprang from the floor with frightening speed and knocked him to the ground. Ron's frightened screams filled the room as the dog leapt, its jaws opened wide. Harry and Draco were frozen. Ginny screamed, "Black! What are you doing?" "No, don't bite me," Ron cried. Harry lunged, grabbing at the dog's flank to pull him off Ron. Ron clamped his hands over his face in terror, waiting for the bite, but the pain never came. Through his fingers, he saw the dog's jaws close, not on him, but on the rat Scabbers. Ron's fear turned to furious protectiveness. "No, you bad dog! Let go! Let Scabbers go!" Harry held on to the dog's flanks, trying to pull him back. "Don't go mad! Black, quiet! You can't make trouble here, do you hear me?" Scabbers, woken by the commotion, let out a high, frantic squeak. Then, clear as day, an angry, high-pitched voice rang out from the creature in Black's mouth. "You're hiding here? You didn't die? You traitor! Damn you! Damn rat!" Molly and Lupin, finishing up in the kitchen, raced back and saw the chaotic scene. Molly's cry of alarm filled the room. Lupin's first instinct was to draw his wand to control the dog, but when he saw what Black had in his mouth, his face changed to shock. "Don't get excited, Sirius! Don't get excited!" Lupin called, trying to soothe the dog and reach for the struggling rat. "I know who you found. Give him to me. Give him to me and trust me. I'll never let him escape. And get off the child. You're frightening them." Harry and the others managed to wrestle Black away from Ron. The dog panted heavily, eyes wild. "Your dog's gone mad. He actually tried to catch a rat. He would have killed Scabbers." Molly was pale with fear. She checked Ron over quickly. When she saw he wasn't hurt, she scowled at Black, then turned to Lupin. "What is going on? You said his name was Sirius?" Molly knew the name well enough. The rumors and the prison break had made every witch and wizard in Britain sensitive to it. Lupin held the rat tightly. Scabbers thrashed and scratched at his hand. "That's him. It's Sirius Black." Molly's face went even grimmer. Ginny and Ron went almost white. Even the children had heard the stories of the cold-blooded killer. Does Snape know about this? Does Dumbledore? You're harboring him. You're harboring a murderer and a fugitive who betrayed his friends. No, Mrs. Weasley, listen to me. There's more to this than it looks. He just tried to bite my son. He didn't. He wanted to catch this rat so he could stop him escaping. Black wouldn't be calmed. He was still snarling, and a frenzy lurked in his eyes. Force him back to his original form. Force him back to his original form, Remus, he seemed to demand. Lupin realized that a long explanation wouldn't cut it. He drew his wand and whispered, "I still remember the charm." He pointed his wand at the rat. Ron thought he was about to hurt Scabbers and shouted, trying to stop him, but Lupin's spell took hold. The balding rat spun in midair, and in a heartbeat, the creature changed. A short, fat, balding, ugly man stood where Scabbers had been. The living room fell completely silent. Ron, Ginny, Harry, Draco, Molly, all of them stared at the transformed figure. Molly, hand trembling, pointed. He is," she whispered, voice breaking. "Peter Pettigrew." A thin, high, terrified voice began to squeal out accusations and pleas. Sirius's eyes burned with hatred as he stared at the man who had returned to his true form. Peter hung his head, terrified beyond belief. He had never expected, while dozing comfortably as a rat, to be found and exposed like this. Lupin looked at Sirius. "Didn't you say you killed him back then?" he asked. The fury in Sirius's eyes was like a living thing. Only a finger was left at the scene. "I thought he was dead. I never thought he could have escaped that way." Lupin glanced at Peter's hand and noticed the missing finger. It seems he fooled everyone. Molly could hardly stand it. "What on earth is going on? Why is our family pet a man who was supposed to be dead? And how do you know him?" Before a full explanation, Lupin flicked his wand and used a binding charm on Peter, tying him up on the spot. Listen, Mrs. Weasley, Sirius was framed. The real traitor who betrayed James and Lily isn't him. It's this person who's been hiding in your house, the one everyone thought was dead." Molly's eyes widened to saucers. Ginny and Ron were stunned speechless. Peter Pettigrew sobbed and begged, wriggling against his bonds. No, I didn't mean to. Let me go. They forced me." Only after following Arthur to his workshop behind the burrow did Severus understand what Arthur had meant when he said the street lamp hadn't been heavily enchanted. In the cramped room, reeking of machine oil, a scatter of honest, clearly cannibalized Muggle parts had been tinkered into something new. Wrenches walked on their own. Crane pulleys could reel and release cable on command. Gears rolled and meshed across the benches. Dominating the space, of course, was the Ford Anglia parked in the middle of the garage, the source of the explosion. Thick smoke still poured from beneath its hood. "My goodness," Arthur said, aghast, lifting the hood to reveal an engine spraying oil. "This shouldn't have happened. I designed it all, every part of it." "You modified this car with alchemy?" Severus asked as he pulled open the door, noting at a glance that the back seat had clearly been given an undetectable extension charm. The dimensions simply didn't match the model. Arthur shrugged and, wand in hand, began to mop up splattered oil. "I made a few adjustments." Severus glanced at the smoking engine. "Those adjustments aren't trivial. If the ministry finds out, you could be held to account." Arthur hushed him with a small, untroubled smile. "Don't worry. I helped revise the law on the misuse of Muggle artifacts. The legislation is far from finished. At least until it's perfected, everything I keep here is legal." He glanced toward the burrow at once. "Whatever you do, though, don't let Molly see this. She doesn't know what I've done to the car." Severus shrugged and watched Arthur work on the engine. The sigils engraved about the components were unmistakably alchemical. "Where did you learn alchemy?" he asked. "Hogwarts only offered that as an elective long ago before they canceled it. Hardly anyone took it." "Self-taught," Arthur said with quiet pride. "I read every book I could find from my school days on. As I got older, the things Muggles made fascinated me. That interest is what steered me to the ministry." The Weasleys, Severus mused, were a family of odd talents. Molly's housework had never been an indicator of weak magic. Arthur himself had an uncommon curiosity. What he found scarcest among wizards was clear-sightedness. The great advantage wizards had over Muggles was that Muggle machinery could be adapted for magical use. There was no inherent barrier if one learned how. Pure-blood prejudice had kept many families blind, refusing to engage with Muggle inventions. Even Muggle-borns who arrived at Hogwarts often drifted away from the Muggle world entirely over 7 years of education. That was a problem. Of course, others had noticed Muggle tools before and feared them. Some wished to strike first, to smash the Muggle world, and to have wizards rule unchallenged. Severus thought a subtler course would work better. Encourage bright young minds, fresh from Muggle schools, to study the natural sciences, attend universities, and enter the civil institutions. That would bring change in a far less explosive way. Arthur, he realized, was one of those rare outliers whom the rest disparaged as blood traitors. It was precisely that kind of outlier who might put wizards on the right path. "Those twins of yours are talented in their own way," Severus remarked, "though they prefer tinkering with prank products." "Passion is the best teacher," Arthur said with a tolerant smile. "Molly scolds them for not doing something proper, but if they love it, they'll find their way." They finished making a temporary fix to the engine. Arthur would have to study it properly later. There were guests at the burrow, and Molly would not let him linger in the garage forever. As they walked back toward the house, voices burst out from inside before they reached the door, crying, shouting, and something that sounded like a roar. "Please, I beg you. I was forced. Ron, madam, you're my masters. Right, you'll take pity. You shameless rat. How can you still look us in the face? You killed James. You killed Lily. And now you act innocent. What is happening? Somebody explain. How did our family rat turn into Peter Pettigrew?" Arthur and Severus exchanged a look and broke into a run. They had both guessed what the chaos meant. Black and Lupin had found Scabbers and forced him to show his true form. Inside the common room, every pair of eyes swung to the one they had all been clinging to for truth. "Arthur, look! Scabbers is a person! Peter Pettigrew. He was supposed to be dead. Black killed him 8 years ago, remember? The ministry called him a hero. Dad, Scabbers turned into a person, and a stinky man at that. Teacher, Remus and the others caught the real traitor. He never died. He's been hiding here. A living Peter Pettigrew is the best evidence we could have, Severus. We can prove Sirius is innocent. Kill him. He must die. The room dissolved into noise. Arthur and Severus moved forward and in 2 quick, weary gestures quieted the crowd. Arthur looked at Severus with a seriousness that made the air still. "You know why I'm here," Severus said, and raised a hand to order those who had risen to sit again. "My purpose in coming today was this. I will explain the true origin of this rat and the betrayal the Potters suffered." Arthur had not been slow to put Severus's earlier actions together. Severus had sent a sedative potion a month ago that had made Scabbers lethargic, and with what had just happened, it was obvious Severus was involved. Gradually, the room fell silent. Peter Pettigrew huddled in a corner and wailed. Severus began. "I learned about Remus's condition at Hogwarts," he said in a quiet voice, and later discovered that Sirius, James, and Peter had learned to become animagi. I knew Peter could take the form of a rat. When I heard Arthur describe Scabbers at the leaky cauldron, especially the missing toe, I linked that rat to the allegedly dead Pettigrew. I wasn't certain then. To stop Scabbers from slipping away after news of Black's supposed escape, I sent that bottle of medicine and left the rest hidden. I brought Black and Remus here together to let them confirm that this rat, Scabbers, is their former friend Peter. Even if one listened closely to Severus's story, there were small inconsistencies. He had chosen his words carefully. When explaining anything to anyone but Dumbledore, he always did. The Weasleys, shocked by the revelation itself, missed the oddities in the telling. Sirius and Remus were focused entirely on Peter. Molly wept a little as she recovered from shock. "If the truth can be cleared up now," she said, dabbing her eyes, "it will be good for poor Harry. He won't have to hate the wrong person or admire the wrong person later." Arthur, thoughtful and practical, frowned at Peter, then at Severus, Lupin, and Black. "We can't hand him straight to the ministry," he said. "Bagnold is stepping down soon. She wants no dark wizards appearing in Britain before she retires." Lupin tilted his head. "Even a corrupt ministry, could they suppress the truth?" Arthur had spent years dealing with officials. He knew how they behaved. They wouldn't try to suppress the truth forever, and eventually it would be known. But under Bagnold's direction, they are likely to delay Peter's trial until a new minister takes office, and then they'll drop this mess on the incoming administration. "That would take too long," Lupin said, frowning. "I don't advise handing him over." Molly, more straightforward than any of the rest, snapped. "If not the ministry, then who do we hand him to?" Arthur fell silent and looked to Severus. At that moment, Harry, suddenly bright with an idea, cried out, like with Sanguini and Patty, "We should tell the public the truth first." Everyone remembered how Severus had acted when official channels had failed before. Exposing the facts in the press could force the issue. But not everyone agreed. "I don't want a retrial. He must die. He must die," someone shouted. Sirius glared at the shrinking figure of Peter, hatred plain on his features. Severus did something sudden and harsh. He slapped the massive black dog across the face. The blow landed heavy. Sirius staggered as if surprised into silence. "Are you daft?" Severus snapped. "Do you think he'll survive if we hand him to the ministry and he goes to Azkaban? You are not the only person he fooled. The whole ministry. Every wizard in Britain was fooled. Given the sum of his crimes, I guarantee that the ministry will see fit to let Dementors take his soul. If you simply kill him yourselves, it proves you have the brain of a dog." Sirius stared at Severus for a long, searching moment. The animal part of him, always quick to snap, made no sound. Severus turned to Lupin. "I'll leave this to you," he said. "I'll give you Xenophilius Lovegood's contact information. The Quibbler has far more reach now than it used to." Lupin hesitated. "Then what will you do?" Severus blinked, dry as ever. "What do you expect? I'm here as a guest of the Weasleys." Molly gave a small, practical yell and ran to the kitchen to try to save a pot of cream soup that might have boiled over in the commotion. Arthur ushered Ginny, Ron, Harry, and even Draco out to the garden and lit up the yard with a few lanterns. The remaining 2 men and the dog, Severus included, cast stupefy on Peter until he slumped into a deep, snoring sleep. "You must have something important to do later," Lupin said, as Severus rose. Severus gave a faint half-smile. "I'm simply going to give some people answers they want, but won't like." "Where is the master?" At Malfoy Manor, after returning from Gringotts, Lucius paced restlessly. Severus had been out of sight for too long, and since France he had lost all contact with Draco. No letters had come. Both Lucius and Narcissa fretted constantly about their son. Lucius had pushed to speed up the matters concerning the Gringotts vault because he feared, if something had happened to Severus, that Severus might use the vault and any other leverage as an excuse to blackmail him through Draco. Still, dealing with the vault required smoothing things over at the Ministry of Magic and softening the goblins at Gringotts, and that took time. If Severus remained silent, Narcissa would be beside herself. By now, only the two of them were at home. They could not even bring themselves to eat. Narcissa spent her days in tears, staring at Draco's photograph as if he would never return. Lucius sat rigid on the sofa, watching the daylight fade and feeling more and more restless when an owl tapped the drawing room window with its beak. He started, then hurried to open the window and took the letter from the bird's claw. The envelope bore no seal. Inside was a single brief line, one sentence and a name. "At 10 p.m., gather everyone at your house. The master wants to see you. Severus Snape." Lucius stared at the paper for a long moment. It took him a full 20 seconds for his hands to begin trembling as he finally understood what the note meant. He drew a steadying breath, rose from the sofa, and sprang into action. "Dobby! Dobby! Where have you gone off to?" he called. With a crack, the house elf appeared, a white gauze bandage wrapped about its head. Its long ears drooped, and it looked up at Lucius meekly. "Master, what are your orders?" "Go and release the owls," Lucius said, pacing. His face was lit with a mixture of excitement and agitation. "Don't send any letters. Just let them go. All of them." Dobby bowed solemnly and vanished. Not long after, a dozen owls lifted from the Malfoy Owlery and disappeared into the gathering dusk. Narcissa had heard the commotion and came down the stairs, tear-stained and wide-eyed. "What is it? Who did you send for?" she asked. "Draco is coming back," Lucius said, drawing a deep breath. Narcissa's worry and sorrow drained from her face and were replaced by stunned hope. She hurried to his side. "Is it Snape? Did he write? Is he bringing our son back?" "He's not just bringing our son," Lucius replied. "He's found the master. Severus will be here with Draco and with the master." The name made Narcissa go pale for a moment before she forced a shaky smile. They found the master and brought him back." "Yes." Lucius spoke loudly, as if to reassure them both, and perhaps himself. "There is no need to fear. We never betrayed the master, did we? Severus must have already explained that any actions we took were to preserve our strength until the master's return. There was no disloyalty," he added with deliberate emphasis, "and Draco found the master with Severus. The master will know our son, and through him see our loyalty." Narcissa relaxed a little at that. Lucius told her to retire to the bedchamber and not to come out. There would be many visitors presently. He did not have to wait long. Less than 20 minutes after the owls had been released, the hearth erupted in green flame, and two people stepped through the fire, a brother and sister. "Releasing owls at this hour," Alecto Caro grumbled. "If this isn't about Snape or the master, we'll tear your house apart." Lucius only pointed at the letter on the table. When Alecto and Amicus read it, they froze as Lucius had. Then Alecto turned sharply to him. "Snape wasn't lying. It's barely an hour to 10. Would he risk making a mockery of us?" Lucius said dryly. "Just as a joke?" Amicus's mind ran ahead. "So he really found the master? The master wants to see us. Does that mean the master accepted his claims? We'll be the most loyal of all." Lucius gave him a look that shut him up. "We have always been loyal. Any compromises we made were to preserve our strength for the master's return. Or did you think of something else?" Amicus scrambled for an answer, waving his hands. "No, of course. We always meant to preserve strength and wait for the master to rise again. We've been loyal, the most loyal." Alecto squinted at Lucius for a long second, then fell quiet. No one present wanted to be on the wrong side of Lucius and Severus just then. If Severus had indeed found the master and Lucius's son was involved, Lucius's standing would be raised when the Death Eaters reorganized. Soon other Death Eaters, those who had secretly funded Severus's trip, arrived at Malfoy Manor. They reacted much the same. First, stunned silence, then a flash of apprehension, and finally a surge of elation. Most of them had hedged their bets between Severus and Barty Crouch Jr. They had helped Severus in secret while keeping ambiguous ties to Barty so as to survive after Voldemort's fall. If Barty had been the one to bring Voldemort back, it might be dangerous for many of them. But Severus's success would vindicate them. It would make their compromises look like prudent preservation rather than betrayal. They had reasons to want Severus to succeed. They had not, of course, forgotten the tasks Severus had left with them before he departed. Had Severus returned empty-handed, those tasks could have been delayed. Now that he had returned with the Master, anything related to the Master could not be postponed, not even a moment. Lucius could feel the thinly veiled pressure. Everyone wanted to know what he had done about the matters Severus had entrusted to them, and some hoped to push responsibility onto him if any question arose. "I haven't been idle," Lucius said. "I've done everything necessary." He swept a glance over the room. "I only returned from Gringotts this morning. The goblins are almost persuaded. As soon as we get the decree from the Ministry of Magic allowing the Lestrange family to inherit the vault, the matter will be settled." "What are you waiting for, then?" Rosier demanded. Lucius slammed his hand on the table. "Since when is this my burden alone? My son is bringing the Master back with Severus, and I advanced the funds from the Malfoy vault for everyone's benefit. Now I'm expected to run around handling the Master's issues? Do any of you think you can sit back and take the credit without lifting a finger?" The assembled Death Eaters exchanged looks. Crabbe, who had long been close to Lucius, laughed uneasily. "We didn't mean that, Lucius. We only asked to see where you were stuck, to see if any of us could help." Others chimed in, pretending to offer assistance and insisting they did not want to claim rewards without contributing. Lucius, sitting back in his high-backed chair, saw through them. He knew them too well. But this was no time for internal quarrels. None of them had yet seen the Dark Lord in person. It would be shameful to argue now. "You know my connections are mostly on the Hogwarts Board of Governors," he said. "I don't have the right person at the ministry to apply for the decree. Does anyone here have someone suitable?" Old Knot was the first to speak. "I have a couple of friends in the Wizengamot and the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. It's not a major issue. It's in order with the law. I can have them persuade Bagnold to sign the decree tomorrow." Relief flickered across Lucius's face. He addressed the room more evenly. "Severus has found the Master. If we wish to restore our former power and prestige, it will take time to rebuild. In that time, the Master will see how everyone performs. When we soon rule the wizarding world again, the Master will know better than we do who truly helped and who only enjoyed the rewards." The Death Eaters inwardly cursed Lucius's smugness, but outwardly nodded agreement. They laughed and talked until the grandfather clock in the drawing room chimed 10. All eyes turned to the hearth. As if summoned by their looks, the cold green flames leapt to life once more. A tall man in black robes stepped from the fire. Severus Snape walked out, an odd trace of the smell of roasted meat clinging to him. He raised an eyebrow and surveyed the dozen or so faces. "Oh, everyone's assembled rather well tonight," he said dryly. "How's supper at Malfoy Manor? Has anyone had the honor of trying it?" No one answered his quip. Instead, all attention was fixed on the fact that no one else had come with him. A dozen voices broke out at once, urgent and terrified. "Where is the Master? Where is the Master?" Hearing their questions, Severus walked to one end of the long table, pulled out a chair, and sat down as if nothing were wrong. "Don't get so worked up," he said. "You should know by now I have no reason to lie. I said I found our Master. There's no reason to panic." "Then where is the Master now?" Rosier demanded, staring him down. "You're not going to tell us he doesn't want to see us, and you're here to act as his temporary stand-in, are you?" Severus gave a short, mocking laugh and jabbed a finger at Rosier. "Look at him, so anxious and twitchy. If you lot were left to your own devices, what could you possibly manage?" Rosier flushed but dared not strike back. None of them wanted to gamble on whether Severus was bluffing or had truly found Lord Voldemort. Still, the barb touched a nerve, and voices rose. Our reason for gathering is to greet the master, not to listen to your sarcasm. If you found him, speak plainly. Where is he? Lucius's expression was coolly impatient. Stop skirting the point. If the master has given you instructions or made arrangements, tell us here. Severus leaned back, arms folded, looking over the dozen or so gathered Death Eaters with a cold smile. Opportunistic, cowardly lot, you who haven't the marrow of loyalty. If all you want is to ride on the master's power again to restore your fortunes, spare me the lofty words. Those were dangerous words. The room went tense. Faces shifted. Someone jumped to their feet. What do you mean by that? Are you turning on us now? We kept our promises. What are you accusing us of? Lucius's irritation showed. This wasn't the behavior he expected from Severus Snape. No reason for the man to lie about finding the Dark Lord, and no cause to insult the room. Yet Severus's expression held no joke, no malice, only a flat indifference. As Lucius watched, a thought struck him. Severus would not lie about finding the Dark Lord. His present behavior must mean something deliberate. When the attacks grew louder and edged toward the most sensitive subjects, Lucius cut through them with a booming voice that silenced everyone. Severus Snape, insult us as you like, but do not slander our loyalty to the master. His words carried enough force that the crowd went quiet, many turning to look at Lucius as if seeing him anew. Lucius ignored them and faced Severus. We agreed then. You find the master. We put everything at his disposal. You told us the master was found. There must be an answer. Where is our Lord? When will he return to lead us? For a moment no one moved. Those who had attacked Severus wore different expressions. Puzzlement, understanding, anger shifting towards something else. Severus watched Lucius's plea with a small smile, and as the room held its breath, spoke in a tone of respect that was not aimed at the assembly. My lord, is this sufficient? He was not addressing anyone there. At once, the dozen Death Eaters flanking the table felt a chill. Behind Severus, where no one had been a heartbeat before, a faint, ghost-like figure had come into being. Ethereal and barely more than a silhouette. The very instant it appeared, the dormant dark marks on their arms flared, burning with a remembered heat as if a fire reached for their skin. Only one voice could awaken them. No one could impersonate it. The change was instantaneous. Pride and bravado fell away. Terror and reverence took their place. Almost without thinking, they dropped to their knees and prostrated themselves to welcome the master. Severus rose and stood behind the figure with a bow. Master, Dark Lord, came the chorus of worship. The figure settled into the chair Severus had occupied and looked down on them in silence. His hand, more transparent than it had been in Albania, tapped the table in time. The waiting stretched, sweat beaded on foreheads. Finally, the figure spoke, and the first words made every head bow lower still. What followed would not be praise. I told Severus I might lend him a tentative trust, just as I trust him. There was no warmth in the voice. I, of course, believe that former like-minded friends would maintain a basic degree of loyalty, however many setbacks befall us. But believed loyalty is never as convincing as loyalty one has seen with one's own eyes. So I had him come alone first. I wanted to see if you had changed, whether for better or for something no one wishes to see. Those who had shouted at Severus trembled. 8 years of absence had not eroded the fear and awe he commanded. After a long silence, the figure spoke again. I understand that when pursued by Aurors, you claimed to be under Imperius. Was that your excuse for becoming my followers? The room could not remain silent. Lucius and the others tried to contain their fear as they answered. Master, we did it to preserve what strength we could, to find you again. Old Knot's eyes reddened, and tears streaked his face. After you vanished, no one could stand against Dumbledore. Had we continued to resist, everything we'd built would have been wiped out. Our lives are small in themselves, but if you return and find no one by your side, if you cannot sweep away those who oppose you, that would be the true crime. They spoke with the fervor of those who had rehearsed their pleas. Each echoed Old Knot's claims, how they had wept and schemed to avoid Azkaban, and all the while hunted for a way to bring the master back. Only Lucius kept silence. He had seen through Severus's purpose earlier. Words now could only create errors. Let others spill their apologies. Voldemort listened. Severus has explained these things and the help you offered in my name. Apart from what you just performed, some concerned only with salvage and self-interest, the conduct of most was acceptable, especially Lucius. Lucius dared to look up at the compliment, flushed with relief and honor. You have done well, and Severus has taught your son well. Merely what your servant should do, Lucius said loudly. The others cast envious looks his way. It was clear he had seized favor. Severus, standing behind the Dark Lord, kept his eyes narrowed. Earlier that day, he had gone back to Hogwarts and met with Dumbledore. By evening, he had found his chance to tell scattered Death Eaters that the Master had been found. Voldemort, understandably, would not place all trust in a single person. In the past, he might have had Quirrell seek those who'd preserved themselves. Tonight, with Severus's guarantee and evidence, he consented to meet his former servants after a test. From the Master's careful behavior, Severus had seen how weakened Voldemort still was. A certain charm used in Albania had maintained him briefly, but it could not stop his power from draining. He needed help, resurrection sooner rather than later, or immediate access to unicorn blood to restore himself temporarily. That was why Voldemort had come to see them tonight, to gather more hands. I need something. The Death Eaters, eager to prove their devotion, did not hesitate. Whatever you need, Master, name it, and we will fetch it. Lucius's mind raced. Did the Dark Lord want the item Severus had once arranged? He was about to promise it could be delivered within a week when the figure spoke again. Unicorn blood. Within a week, I require you to kill a unicorn and bring me its blood. A stunned silence fell. They all looked at one another in disbelief. In Britain, unicorns were only found wild in one place, the Forbidden Forest at Hogwarts. That meant breaking into Hogwarts, where Albus Dumbledore sat, if they were to kill a unicorn. Before the thought could rip through the assembled ranks, Severus stepped forward and bowed his head. I will personally present a living unicorn to you. All eyes swung to him. Our alliance is unbreakable. Some of the Death Eaters felt uneasy. Even if Severus truly had ability and skill, he could not be allowed to stand out so conspicuously and take credit for every success. The unicorn was at Hogwarts. Given Severus's ties to the school, or rather to Dumbledore, stealing a unicorn from the Forbidden Forest would appear easier for him than for anyone else. If he had been the one to find the Dark Lord, and now that the Dark Lord had need, he was the one stepping forward to do the work, what did that make the rest of them? Useless freeloaders? Worthless scraps? Had they been too eager in bringing back the Dark Lord, only to be sidelined now? After victory, wouldn't the greatest rewards go to those who had actually labored? Severus, Bellatrix, Lestrange? The more they thought it over, the more anxious they became. None of them wanted Severus to monopolize everything again. Before anyone could voice that objection, Voldemort spoke. I won't assign this to you. You have more important tasks to handle for me afterward. Lucius. At his name, Lucius jolted, lifting his head, his face bright with excitement. My lord, I am here. The matter of the unicorn is entrusted to you. Go and handle it well. Lucius had no room to hesitate. Within a week, your servant will certainly bring you a living unicorn, he promised loudly. Envious glances followed him. Everyone knew the Malfoys were governors of Hogwarts and had connections among the other governors. Getting a unicorn from the Forbidden Forest without going through Dumbledore would still be difficult, but it would be far easier for Lucius than for most. And Voldemort had picked him because of his performance in the previous meeting. Lucius's speech had clearly helped his case. Voldemort continued, eyes fixed on the kneeling figures. Until the unicorn's blood is obtained, I will be recuperating for a period. During this time, you must obey Severus's arrangements. Those words stunned nearly everyone. They raised their heads and looked at Severus standing behind the Dark Lord, calm and apparently unsurprised. 1,000 thoughts flashed through their minds: jealousy, calculation, vigilance, envy. You must obey every instruction he gives you, as if it were an order from me. If I later discover that anyone has caused trouble during this process, I will not hesitate to make them understand the consequences of choosing to be my enemy rather than a friend. Voldemort's open favor of Severus terrified them into silence. We understand, my lord. We will follow him as we follow you. He seemed satisfied. You may all leave for now. I need to speak with Severus alone. No one disobeyed. The Death Eaters exchanged furtive glances as they rose and left the great hall, leaving only Severus and Voldemort. Severus bowed respectfully when the others had departed. My lord, I need you to help me with something more important, Severus. Voldemort's voice was soft as he stared at the one servant he could temporarily trust, the man who had brought him out of Albania. Severus adopted a solemn expression. Whatever it is, my lord, you may entrust it to me. I will carry out anything you command. I need you to find two things. One of them is in Little Hangleton. Little Hangleton? Severus's eyes flicked up. Yes, in a muggle grave belonging to someone named Tom Riddle. I need that man's bone. You must retrieve his bone for me. I understand. And the second item will be easy for you. Harry Potter. I need his blood. You must bring me his blood. Everything will be as you wish, my lord. Severus did not hesitate. He accepted both tasks immediately. Voldemort studied him for a moment. You are my most loyal servant, Severus. Among these people, I trust you alone. You will help me get these things done, won't you? At least one is already taken care of, Severus said with a small smile. Harry Potter has always been right under our noses, hasn't he? Voldemort laughed. Ha! Very good. You have changed from the man I once knew. This change removes your final flaw, Severus. You will achieve greatness. After giving his commands, Voldemort returned to the casket at the center of the chamber. He still had not been able to discover what was wrong with it. When Severus respectfully closed the lid, the fawning expression left his face. He took a seat in a high-backed chair, a sly look on his features. He intends to pursue both simultaneously, he said. One of the others swallowed nervously. What does he want you to do exactly? Severus's voice was cold. The bone of a father unwittingly given can regenerate your son. The flesh of a servant willingly forfeited can restore your body. The blood of an enemy taken by force can revive your foe. He sneered. While having someone prepare the unicorn, he is at the same time plotting to complete his resurrection. The flesh of a willing servant, the man murmured, catching the key point. Voldemort had not mentioned that detail in front of the others. Severus went on as if it were obvious. The servant who offers his flesh willingly, that has to be me in his mind. He looked disdainful. Don't be taken in by his praise. No matter how useful or excellent any of us are to him, we are nothing more than expendable materials. The useful can be used, the useless can be used, the loyal can be used, the disloyal can be used. As long as someone provides value, he does not care what happens to them. Severus knew Voldemort better than anyone. Leaving aside pointless chatter, he rose and opened the door to the antechamber. The Death Eaters, who had been whispering there, stood at once. Severus smiled as they re-entered. Gentlemen, let us discuss how we will accomplish the tasks our master has assigned. Voldemort's person was nowhere in sight. Where is Master? Amicus asked. Master is resting, Severus replied with a shrug, but you should assume he can overhear us at any time. Those words made everyone more cautious. They returned to their seats, and Lucius, who had planned to take the place of honor, deliberately ceded it to Severus. Severus sat heavily, and the room fell silent. All eyes were on him. No one would openly defy Voldemort's instructions now. They had promised obedience, and the Dark Lord's return meant the British wizarding world faced a shift in power. Gentlemen, Severus said loudly, finding the Master again is only the first step toward restoring our former glory. If we are to reclaim the power we lost, it will depend on what we do next. How is the matter of that goblet progressing? Someone asked. Severus did not mention the bones in Little Hangleton that Voldemort had ordered him to find. He turned to Lucius. Lucius answered, It's essentially resolved. We applied sufficient pressure at Gringotts. We only need the Ministry's decree. In less than 3 days, the Lestrange family vault will be transferred away. Severus nodded. The day after tomorrow, at this time, I expect to see that goblet set before me. I can guarantee it. Amicus, Severus called, you and your sister have ties with those who rallied around Barty Crouch Jr., do you not? Amicus flushed. They did have contact with Barty's group and with many others. Knott, Rosier, Crabbe and Goyle all kept private lines to both sides, but he dared not accept the implication lightly. The man he had once fought alongside had been cast as a traitor by those who had found the master. "It wasn't me," Amicus protested quickly. "They were the ones who contacted me. They asked for help, but I never agreed." Severus's tone softened. "Don't be nervous. We are one body, aren't we? We formed an alliance from the start. Don't worry, our bond is unbreakable." Those words made Amicus, his sister, and the others breathe easier. They had feared Severus might use his position to purge those who hedged their bets, treating them as servants at best. Now he seemed inclined to tolerate their previous duplicity, and that was a relief. "You're right," Amicus said with a relieved smile. "What would you have me use my connections for?" Severus steepled his hands. "It's simple. The Master has awakened the Dark Mark. People will know the Master has returned. You must tell them that if they consider themselves servants of the Master, they must immediately abandon Barty Crouch Jr." Amicus's smile grew. "They aren't fools. Once I tell them the Master has been found and we are working for him again, they'll rally to our side." Old Knot chimed in. "Even Barty Crouch Jr., once he knows this, won't dare to act under the Dark Lord's banner alone. He is reckless, but he has not betrayed the Dark Lord." "Finally, about the unicorn," Severus said, turning back to Lucius. "That task was given to you personally. Do not disappoint the Master." Lucius drew in a steadying breath. The pressure was enormous, but opportunity always carried risk. If he succeeded, his place near the Dark Lord would be assured. As the atmosphere relaxed, the conversation drifted from immediate tasks to plans and fantasies of the future. With their master returned, they believed power would be remade, purebloods restored to dominance, and Muggle-borns purged. They spoke late into the night. One by one they left until only Severus remained. With the others gone, Lucius could no longer hold back. "Where is Draco? Why didn't you bring him back?" Severus spread his hands. "It's not that I didn't bring him. He insisted on staying overnight with the Weasleys. It was late, and he didn't want to disturb you. He says he'll return tomorrow." The Albanian Forest. After their dark mark flared on their arms, Barty and Perkins were ecstatic. It proved they were in the right place. The Dark Lord was here, still calling his servants. That single day, they made as much noise as they could. Under Barty's plan, since they didn't yet know the Dark Lord's exact location, they would summon him by making a scene. So that emerald green dark mark burned in the foreign sky. Because of the Fountain of Good Luck, witches and wizards from countries near Albania had gathered, and many recognized the sign. Panic spread quickly. The Albanian Aurors sent nearly all their forces into the forest. While trying to keep order, they were also nervously hunting for the caster of the mark. The Death Eater's reach had never been confined to Britain. Voldemort's sights had been set on Europe first, then the world. For a small ministry like Albania's, the appearance of a dark mark was enough to make it a top priority. But Barty and Perkins hid well. They slipped past the Aurors who swarmed the woods, and yet the Dark Lord did not take the initiative to come and find them. 2 days passed, and Perkins finally lost his nerve. Could it be? Could Snape and the others have already found the Master? The mark reacted. Did the Master answer him? He fretted. Barty said nothing, staring sullenly up at the darkening sky. Perkins paced. "We haven't been able to find them since yesterday. They vanished from that old troll camp the day after the mark flared. Logically, Snape should have felt the call too. He should have stayed to search, like us. He can't have had no reaction at all when he saw our dark mark." Barty's silence made Perkins more urgent. "Why are you sitting there? If Snape's found the Master, he'll smear us. Maybe the Master won't believe him, but what if he does? What do we do? What do we do?" As Perkins paced in a panic, an owl suddenly dove from the night and dropped to their spot. Barty narrowed his eyes. Perkins was stunned. Who could possibly know we're here? No one knows our location. Who sent an owl? Barty didn't ask many questions. He took the letter from the owl's talons, glanced at it, then crushed it into ash with a flick of his wand and a burst of fire. "What did it say?" Perkins demanded, staring. "Let me see it! Is it that Snape's already gone back to Britain with the Master?" Barty remained silent, drawing his hand inside his sleeve to grip the tip of his wand. "Why aren't you saying anything? Afraid, are you? Afraid to tell me the truth? Snape found the Master. He's the most loyal servant. The Master trusts him. Is that it?" Perkins, near hysteria, lunged to grab Barty's shoulder, only for Barty's wand to whip out of his sleeve and point straight at him. Crucio! The cruciatus lash struck Perkins before he could react. It tore into him like fire and knives, charring every nerve until he screamed. "Ah, idiot! I'm sick of you idiots!" Barty roared. "Crucio!" Another crucio doubled Perkins over, his body convulsing. So what if Snape found the master first? Why are you frightened? Why are you anxious? Why are you cowardly? As long as the master returns, as long as he goes on leading us toward that grand ideal, does it matter who brings him back? Speak. Answer me. You lot, pigs and curs who only care about power and profit, think only of what you would gain by finding the master first. If you weren't the ones to find him, would you prefer the master never returned at all? Barty spat. Crucio! When the third crucio hit, Perkins slipped into unconsciousness. He lay motionless, eyes vacant, foam at his mouth, his face ashen. The forest fell quiet under the night, broken only by Barty's heavy breathing. After a time, he controlled himself again, returning to his usual gloomy, withdrawn mask. He took a handkerchief from his pocket, wiped the sweat from his palms, and dropped the cloth over Perkins' body. Barty exhaled and spoke as much to himself as to the inert man at his feet. I didn't really want to kill you. Whatever your motives, you could have been of use to the master. But your stupidity is unbearable. It sickens me, utterly disgusting, like those damn creatures. He raised his wand once more. Avada Kedavra! Severus did not return to the Weasleys after meeting with those Death Eaters. He went back to Hogwarts and straight to the headmaster's office, where Dumbledore sat in his nightclothes and nightcap, deep in thought. Since Severus had told him that morning about the remnant of Voldemort's soul inside Harry, Dumbledore had been turning the problem over and over. Even he could not immediately find a way to remove the fragment without harming the boy. When Severus arrived, the tight frown Dumbledore had worn all afternoon finally softened into a smile. Have you finished what needed doing? Severus sank into the chair opposite and, out of habit, fished an old snack tin from his robe. He found some sherbet lemons and offered Dumbledore one as a late-night bite. More or less, it went smoother than I expected. Voldemort trusts no one but me. He has consolidated command of those people into my hands. As for Barty's crowd, I had the Carrows contact them. Those fugitives the Ministry is after will soon regroup, making them easy to handle. Dumbledore listened closely. He knew Severus had more to say. Since August, whenever this man came to his office, he brought surprises. And Voldemort himself? Severus set a teacup on the desk. He can't wait any longer. Existing for so long without a body, neither man nor ghost has weakened him. Without someone's help, he wouldn't even be able to leave that Albanian forest. So he tasked Lucius and the others. They must get unicorn blood within a week. At the same time, privately, he has ordered me to prepare his resurrection. Dumbledore's briefly relaxed brow tightened again. What did he ask you to find? Bone of the father, flesh of the servant, blood of the enemy. As a wizard of long experience, Dumbledore understood immediately what Voldemort planned. From Voldemort's point of view, with Severus at his side, preparing these things was easy. Tom's forebears' graves would not be moved. Many followers would volunteer flesh for the ritual. And the blood of the enemy? Harry Potter was already close to Severus. The hardest part had, shockingly, become the simplest. Dumbledore understood why Severus had come to him. So we have little time to decide, he said quietly. Severus held up 2 fingers, still dusted with cookie crumbs. 2 weeks. He gave me 2 weeks. After that, if I haven't prepared these things, it will be taken as treachery. Dumbledore's face became grave. 2 weeks was too short. No matter which path they chose, preparation would be insufficient. If they followed Severus's plan, to let Voldemort complete his resurrection under controlled conditions, then force a final confrontation so Voldemort would destroy the bit of soul inside Harry, Harry would have to be ready. The protective charm Lily had left would only go so far. It would be most effective when Harry's own conviction was at its height. But Harry had just turned 9. Even the firmest conviction of a child could not match an adult's. If Harry were sent to duel a resurrected Voldemort now, he would most likely die by Voldemort's hand. If they chose instead to break with Voldemort now and seal him permanently, for example, in that teacup, until they could extract the soul fragment from Harry, they would face another problem. They could not keep Voldemort's fragment near them forever. Opportunists would know where to search, and once they escaped or were released, someone would try to find their master. You cannot guard a single object forever. Severus and Dumbledore could not watch a teacup indefinitely. As Dumbledore sank into thought, Severus sat calmly eating sweets and sipping tea. The sudden change in the old man made Severus raise an eyebrow. "What are you laughing at?" Dumbledore leaned back, smiling and watching Severus. "Severus, however you've changed, you have a sincere, upright heart." Severus rolled his eyes. "Flatterer. I can't just yank the soul fragment out of Harry on the spot." "You must have a plan, then," Dumbledore said softly, his eyes twinkling behind his spectacles. "If you didn't, you wouldn't be here so composed." Severus met Dumbledore's gaze and tapped his fingers. "You've put everything on my shoulders, haven't you? Talk to me, Severus. What do you propose?" "At Harry's age, it's impossible to make him duel Voldemort. That would be murder, not salvation," Severus said firmly. "Aside from that, our choice is narrow to either breaking with Voldemort and sealing him in the teacup until we can remove the soul fragment, or waiting until Harry dies of old age. If we seal him, we cannot keep his fragment near us. Anyone with a motive could guess where to look." Severus pulled a newspaper from his pocket and slapped it onto the desk. "Our luck may hold. A major project is launching on October 18th. We need to find a way to get on their boat. In the future, Voldemort's ghost will never again appear in the wizarding world." Dumbledore's eyes widened slightly as he slowly slid the newspaper Severus had photographed. The secondary edition, featuring only a single, unmoving black and white picture, toward him and read the report carefully. Severus continued speaking. "And we both understand what kind of people the die-hard followers of Lord Voldemort are. People like Barty, Bellatrix, and the Lestranges. They aren't like Lucius, who acts only for his own benefit. They truly believe in the doctrine of absolute pure-blood supremacy. That makes them more extreme, more fanatical, and, at the same time, it means they'll never bother to learn anything about Muggles. And that is where our greatest advantage lies." Severus looked at Dumbledore. "As long as we keep this a secret, with only the two of us knowing. Indeed, we can even erase our memories afterward. Then anyone trying to trace Lord Voldemort will never be able to find where he is. But whenever they look up at the starry sky, they'll see the person they long for among that vast sea of stars." He lowered his voice on purpose as he spoke. The portraits of former headmasters and headmistresses along the walls rustled anxiously. They were already confused, entirely in the dark about what Severus and Dumbledore were discussing, and now they couldn't even hear the words. Dumbledore read the article through, then looked up with eyes noticeably brighter than before. He could feel that Severus's plan was feasible and reliable. Severus had been right, Dumbledore thought. He had never been wrong. "This thing wasn't created here in Britain. It's from Germany and—" Dumbledore began. "It was a joint venture between West Germany and the United States, but the project was delayed for 7 years, Severus finished, clearly having already worked out the details in his mind. Recently, they've finally completed the preparations." Dumbledore's expression turned grave. "Will it definitely work?" Severus held up 4 fingers. "It will. It will pass Venus in 4 months, reach its destination in 6 years, and finally, 14 years from launch, when its power is exhausted, it will crash into its target." Dumbledore was surprised by the precision of Severus's timetable, but he believed him. For all his shortcomings, Severus had been unfailingly accurate. Still, Dumbledore, who had weathered a century of turmoil in the wizarding world, was not learned in the ways of Muggle technology. The statute of secrecy had protected wizards from being discovered by Muggles, but that very secrecy had left most wizards lacking in common sense about Muggle affairs. "So how do we hitch a ride on this? Hitchhiker? Do we need the Ministry of Magic to ask the British Prime Minister to intervene?" Dumbledore tapped the back of his hand as he asked earnestly. Severus shook his head decisively. "First of all, the Ministry must never know. Even if they don't know, we want their help. If anyone investigates our actions later, they'll be able to trace our inquiries and discover what we did. Secondly, even if we did involve the Prime Minister, he couldn't help. Sending a teacup on something like this isn't a trivial request, and there's no such thing as tagging along. The Americans would never agree. If they did, it would be because they were curious about the teacup itself and wanted to study why Britain had asked. Dumbledore frowned. Then what shall we do? Severus tapped the table and said in a measured tone, "We are going to break wizarding law and cast spells on muggles. Confundus, memory charms, legilimency, even imperious, they could all be useful here, but casting those spells on muggles is an explicit breach of our laws." He looked at Dumbledore and blinked. "As the supreme mugwump of the International Confederation of Wizards, what do you think?" Dumbledore's face was untroubled. "I have never been a pedant. Whether the use of such magic is illegal depends on the purpose. Besides, the spells you've mentioned are not, by their nature, intended to cause lasting harm, are they?" Severus did not seem surprised by Dumbledore's reply. He rose from his chair and smiled. "Since you have no objection, once we have dealt with all of Lord Voldemort's other Horcruxes, I'll take the teacup to the United States myself." To Severus's surprise, Dumbledore spoke before he could finish. "Let me do it." Severus turned, startled. They locked eyes. Dumbledore's voice was soft. "This kind of delicate thing is better left to me. You are still young. Once matters here are settled, you can come with me and we'll go together to the United States." "You know I'm no saint. This little thing won't stain my conscience," Severus protested. "But the you of the past and the you of now are different, aren't they?" Dumbledore only smiled. "In any case, I hope you can always remain as clean and clear as you are now, Severus." "That is my hope for you," he said. "Besides, didn't you already agree with me this morning? Leave this matter to me." Faced with such words, Severus fell silent for a few seconds, then nodded. "Very well." Meanwhile, at Gringotts, old Knot, who had taken over Lucius's business, coldly handed a parchment to the goblin managers. It bore the current Minister of Magic Bagnold's signature. "This is a decree from the Ministry of Magic," old Knot said evenly. "The wizarding community's position is clear. That vault belongs to the Lestrange family, not to Rodolphus Lestrange personally. Transfer ownership to Horst Lestrange. If you refuse, the next visitor will not be as accommodating as I am. 13 families, Knot, Crabbe, Goyle, Rosier, Caro, Malfoy among them, will sever all trade and cooperation with Gringotts in Britain if you do not comply. The ministry will also dispatch aurors to investigate why goblins are refusing to obey a government decree." Old Knot leaned back and smiled faintly. "You can weigh the gains and losses yourselves." The three goblin managers exchanged glances. One cleared his throat. "Our duty is to guard wizards' vaults and collect lawful fees, provided everything complies with wizarding law. Now that the ministry has decreed that this vault belongs to the entire Lestrange family rather than Rodolphus alone, we will of course follow the law." He waved a spindly finger. The door opened and Griffook, who had been waiting outside, entered and bowed. The goblin manager pointed at a wooden cabinet. A drawer opened and a brass key flew out. "Go to the 1/3 secret chamber, fetch the key, and take this gentleman and the designated heir, Mr. Horst," he instructed. "Lestrange, remember to cancel the Gemino and Flagrante curses on any items before cataloging them for the vault." "Our troubles are enough as it is," the manager muttered under his breath. "If anyone from the Knot or Lestrange families gets hurt here again, they'll tear the roof off." Old Knot's smile grew. Since Lucius had been tasked with collecting unicorn blood within the week, he was too occupied to meddle in the Lestrange vault matter. That left Old Knot, who had contacts in the ministry and stood to gain credit, plenty of motivation to act. Griphook led them away. "They always threaten us the same way," one goblin grumbled as they walked through the winding tunnels. "It was like this 200 years ago, and it's like this now. If Rodolphus Lestrange is released from prison and asks for his vault someday, show him the decree and tell him to take it up with the ministry," another replied. The goblins grumbled, but were disinclined to get involved further. Old Knot did not care for their opinions. Led by Griffook, he and the party found an elderly goblin named Bogrod. After producing the brass key, the goblins went to the 1/3 secret chamber to annul certain protections. They returned, and Old Knot and Horst Lestrange climbed into a small cart that rattled along the underground tracks. They passed the thief's downfall, skirted past the blind, ancient dragon that guarded the deeper vaults, and at last reached the level containing the most secure vaults. Lestrange family. No. Account number. Bogrod muttered as he drove the cart to a stop. He checked the paperwork one last time before placing his hand on the stone vault door. The door vanished, and an opening revealed itself. The cave beyond was piled from floor to ceiling with gold coins and goblets, silver armor, exotic animal hides, jars of rare potions, and a skull still wearing a crown. Horst Lestrange's excitement was obvious. None of this had belonged to him until now, but from that day forward, the vault would be his. Griphook and Bogrod did not enter. They reminded Old Knot that the protective wards had been lifted and then stood by the door to wait. As agreed, half of the contents here belonged to me and those who assisted, Old Knot said with a smile. Horst's face tightened, but he masked his displeasure quickly. Of course, Uncle Knot. Without you, I wouldn't have a claim to this vault. Help yourself. Old Knot ignored the forced courtesy and began to search with a clear goal. Severus had described the item, a small cup made of gold, engraved with a badger and 2 handles. He rifled through the piled treasure until, just as frustration began to rise, he spotted a tiny gold cup perched on a high wooden shelf. At first glance, anyone would have known it was no ordinary trinket. Old Knot felt his breath catch, but there was no greed in him, only duty. He recognized it as an item his master wanted. With a borrowed ladder from Griphook, he climbed and carefully brought the cup down. "I'll take this first," Old Knot said, keeping his voice haughty as he faced Horst. "As for the division of the rest, we'll discuss it after business settles." "Everything as you wish," Horst said through a forced smile. Old Knot did not look back. He placed the cup into a secure briefcase and returned to the surface. He went to a Knot family shop in Diagon Alley, sealed the briefcase, and sent a letter by owl. 5 minutes later, a tall figure in black robes with a ponytail appeared. "The task assigned by the Dark Lord. Have you completed it?" Severus asked. Old Knot opened the briefcase without hesitation. When Severus saw the teacup inside, a rare smile crossed his face. "You have done a great service, Knot.